Chapter 1918. Apart from the problem with the talisman, Wang Ling rarely took the initiative to send Wang Ming a text message. This time, too many strangers had suddenly entered number 60 high, which gave Wang Ling a faint uneasy feeling. Therefore, in the morning, Wang Daikong kept reminding himself not to meddle in other people's business. It was better to avoid trouble than trouble. In the end, he still couldn't help taking out his phone to send Wang Ming a message to ask about the situation. Sure enough, gossip and curiosity were contagious. Wang Ling remembered that he hadn't always been a curious baby, but after spending so much time with Hero Gua and Super Chun, it seemed that he had naturally developed this bad habit. Of course, it wasn't just Wang Ling who was curious about this matter. Almost all of Grade 1, Class 3 had been mobilized. It could only be said that as number 60 high's elite class, Grade 1, Class 3 was in the end Grade 1, Class 3. Apart from academic matters, it seemed that they always paid more attention to external matters than to academic matters. Almost all of them were displaying their remarkable abilities. Before Wang Ming could reply, Lotus Sun stepped into the classroom. The two of them looked at each other, then Lotus Sun said, "I've already asked around, it's people from Sacred College." Wang Ling nodded his head. He hadn't expected Lotus Sun to be the first to find out. But this wasn't strange. After all, number 60 High Student Union was in fact the Grey Church's headquarters. The Grey Church's branches were now branching out both domestically and abroad. It might be difficult to ask around about other things, but if these people were from the school, it would be too easy. But why would people from Sacred College suddenly visit number 60 High? No student would be unfamiliar with the name Sacred College. Because Sacred Sciences was Sacred Sciences Academy. It was currently the number 1 high school in Wuxia Nation, and ranked 3rd in the world. It was even more amazing than number 1 Devil Subduing High School, or even Maelstrom Imperial High School in Mishio Nation's Glio City. So what was number 60 High's current ranking? Wang Ling remembered that number 60 High was currently ranked 37th in the country and 126th in the world, after he had won several major competitions since his arrival. But even so, it could only be considered an upper-middle cultivation high school. It was a far cry from a top academy like Sacred College. So it was reasonable to say that Sacred College and number 60 High had nothing to do with each other. In the end, Saint Ke had suddenly come knocking on his door, which made him feel extremely strange. The point was that it was impossible for Audiobook, the director of Songhai City's General Administration of 100 schools, to not know about this sort of schoolyard matter, but until now, Audiobook hadn't revealed anything to him. This also meant that even Audiobook didn't know about this. To be able to directly bypass the General Administration of 100 schools and directly contact number 60 high school while avoiding Audiobook, this meant that they didn't care about Audiobook at all. Wang Ling was instantly amused. Ever since Audiobook had embarked on this path, with the help and guidance of Sun Dakong, the head of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools, his career could be said to have been smooth sailing. In half a year, he had earned 3 first-class merits and various second-class merits, which added up to no less than 10 honors, which was simply unimaginable to ordinary people. A lot of people knew that Audiobook was very popular, and rushed to curry favor with him. Although Audiobook was polite and kept his distance, he could be considered to have scrupulously abided by his heart, and remained unsullied by the mud, but there were still very few people who didn't regard him as a green onion. After all, it was Sacred Sciences. Sure enough, the number 1 academy in the country's cultivation world had this kind of confidence. It wasn't just the instructors and teachers here. Even the students could walk around with their heads held high. This was unique in the country's educational system, which focused on collective honor. As students of the number 1 academy, they naturally felt proud of their alma mater. At Sacred Sciences, some powerful young geniuses were even more popular, and would appear on the internet's top searches from time to time. It was because Wang Ling had seen so many of these types of hot searches that he understood everything when Lotus Sun mentioned Sacred Sciences just now. Those famous students from Sacred Sciences were so popular that even celebrities and internet celebrities couldn't compare. It wasn't that Wang Ling was exaggerating. This was indeed the case. Almost subconsciously, he unlocked his phone and opened Weibo. 2 of the top 10 trending topics were related to Sacred Sciences. One was about a student from Sacred Sciences who had won a gold medal in an alchemy competition abroad. The person who had refined the pills was called Su Xingyue, and she was one of Sacred Sciences' female star students. Her alchemy skills were superb, and she had even competed with immortal Toya on the same stage. At that time, Su Xingyue, who was only 13 years old, had almost defeated immortal Toya, who was very famous in the alchemy circle. Wang Ling still remembered this piece of news to this day. The other was about Chu Yiling, the president of Sacred Sciences Student Union, but this piece of news looked a little like gossip. The photo didn't capture Chu Yiling's face, and only showed the back of a teenager, who looked a little like Chu Yiling eating barbecue with girls. The teenager was shirtless, very fair, and had a very good figure. The accompanying headline was, "Shocking." The president of Sacred Sciences Student Union is suspected of abusing his power to lead new student union members to break the ice and win them over. Wang Ling knew at a glance that this was fake news. Although the person in the photo did look a little like Chu Yiling's back, this kind of rumor was really too exaggerated. For someone like Chu Yiling to be able to sit in the position of president of the student union, he was a genius among geniuses, and would definitely advance to the nascent soul stage before he graduated from high school. There was no way such a person would easily indulge in barbecue, let alone use his position to play dirty tricks. After determining that it was gossip, Wang Ling couldn't be bothered to read anymore, and quickly turned off his phone. But this gossip hot search also showed that Sacred Sciences' level of attention in the industry was astonishing. Students like Chu Yiling and Su Xingyue, who had become famous at a young age, already had no lack of cultivation resources. They could earn a lot of money just by being a spokesperson, and they could exchange it for all kinds of rare cultivation resources. It was almost like a snowball operation. But becoming famous at a young age also came with a price, and that was being watched by all sides. To a certain extent, they would lack freedom, and everyone would be watching their every move. Under this kind of attention, Wang Ling even felt that it was difficult for them to even breathe. Thus, Wang Ling was really glad that he could study and live at number 60 high school. Although he would occasionally run into some trouble, at least he lived a very secretive and carefree life, and even his study life was relatively quiet. Just as Wang Ling was sighing with emotion, Hirogua's excited voice instantly came from outside the door. He had initially gone to ask around, but hadn't found anything. Instead, he had found out about the results of the monthly test this time. As soon as he entered the classroom, Hirogua's excited voice rang out. "Holy shit! Wang Ling! You're number 1 on the rising list of the entire grade. Awesome, Lingzi. Damn. Awesome." Wang Ling immediately dropped a headache to his forehead at this outburst. This slap in the face had come too suddenly, and he decided to take back what he had just said about his quiet study life. Chapter 1919. Wang Ling shuddered at Hirogua's shout. He had never realized that there would come a day when this guy's voice could actually be so loud. Now the whole class's eyes began to focus on Wang Ling, and all of them had extremely astonished and incredulous expressions on their faces. "Strong, Lingzi. I don't think your grades in any of the subjects have improved much, and are only 5 or 6 points higher than usual on average. How did you directly get first place on the ranking list?" Little Peanut Su Xiao also had an astonished expression on his face. This was the first time that Wang Ling's ranking had risen, and he had surpassed him, the commissary in charge of studies. This was simply an epic-making day. Good heavens, it looks like he's doing exceptionally well this time. I thought Lingzi was always deliberately suppressing his score. Superchin once again inadvertently exposed the truth, and Wang Ling wanted nothing more than to directly gag him with a blackboard eraser. Don't think too much about it, it was more difficult this time. Student Wang Ling's grades have always been more stable, which shows his advantage. It's normal for him to get first place once. When all is said and done, student Wang Ling is still luckier. Lotus Sun couldn't take it anymore, and came out to smooth things over. Wang Ling immediately gave her a grateful look. Sure enough, he knew it wasn't anything good. His eyelids had been twitching last night. "Everyone, look out the window." At that moment, Lotus Sun shouted again, and everyone's attention shifted away from Wang Ling. Wang Ling raised his head and followed Lotus Sun's gaze. Through the window of the teaching building, The early morning sun just happened to break through the clouds and shine on number 60 High School gate, forming a golden carpet. A young girl with shoulder-length hair dressed in a flame-patterned hanfu slowly strolled in through the gate. Almost everyone's attention was instantly drawn to her. Superchin rubbed his eyes. He felt that this girl looked particularly familiar, and he subconsciously took out his phone to search for something. Then he was stunned. Damn, isn't that Su Xingyue? St. Prep's Su Xingyue. That alchemy genius girl? One of St. Prep's top stars? Everyone was stupefied, completely unable to believe that Su Xingyue, who had just won a gold medal at the International Alchemy Open abroad, would appear at number 60 high. It seemed that the news had actually been delayed due to the time difference. In other words, Su Xingyue had come to number 60 high as soon as she received the award. It wasn't just grade 1, class 3. After discovering Su Xingyue's arrival, almost all the students in the teaching block were in an uproar. It was everyone's first time seeing Su Xingyue in person, and it gave them a surreal feeling. Wang Ling had never expected Su Xingyue's arrival to be so lethal. In the blink of an eye, everyone in the classroom had already disappeared to the corridor to watch Su Xingyue, leaving only Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and a few core members of Battle Sect. Lotus Sun smiled bitterly and looked at Wang Ling. Classmate Wang Ling, it seems that my attractiveness has been suppressed for the time being. Wang Ling. Gu Xuanji rubbed his chin. Looks like something big is going to happen this time. We have to prepare in advance. When Su Xingyue was 13 years old, she almost beat the Cave Immortal in a competition. However, at that time, the Cave Immortal had underestimated her. Now that she has become the champion of the International Alchemy Open's junior division, Su Xingyue's strength must be even stronger than before. Jin Yuan. In any case, let's take things one step at a time. They don't come with good intentions. Gu Xuanji narrowed his eyes and smiled. Look at the way they walk through the school gate. They don't treat number 60 high as an outsider at all, and exude confidence as if they're stepping into their back garden. I'm afraid that in the eyes of First Academy students, we're the newcomers. Lotus Sun. Then seniors, do you know why on earth the people from St. Common have come to number 60 high? Both of them quickly shook their heads. Gu Xuanji. There's definitely no one who knows more about cultivation matters than Audiobook, and even he doesn't know. This means that St. Common's visit this time was a direct one without any prior notice. Immortal Jin Yuan said, there's no need to be anxious. The truth will come out sooner or later. Isn't Senior Golden Lamp also here? Furthermore, he's now the vice headmaster, so he definitely knows something. Let's wait for news from him. The first class in the morning was Old Antique's Theory of History class. As a teacher in the school administration office, Old Antique knew a lot of inside information. However, when someone in class asked about St. Common this time, Old Antique unexpectedly kept them guessing. Ahem, everyone will naturally know when the time comes. Be quiet in class first. Old Antique cleared his throat and said, today's lesson is about expanding knowledge about the core world. We all know that there's actually a huge core world inside the earth, where there are many powerful spirit beasts and rare spirit plants that don't exist on the surface. There's even technology hidden in the core that far surpasses our modern cultivation technology. But even after the earth is upgraded, human cultivators are still unable to directly reach the core world with current technology. Furthermore, no one knows what kind of dangers they'll encounter in the core world. Perhaps in the near future, when the entrance to the core world is completely opened and the technology is fully mature, human cultivators will be able to develop tourism and resource collection in the core world in an orderly manner. Just like when everyone went to Beast King's remains the last time. But the unknown risks in the core world are far greater than in Beast King's remains. Speaking up to this point, Lotus Sun was about to raise her hand to ask a question, when Teacher Pan suddenly stepped into the classroom. Just as Lotus Sun was about to raise her hand to ask a question, Teacher Pan suddenly stepped into the classroom. Although Old Pan had a habit of suddenly calling people out in the middle of class, this was the first time she had seen her in such a hurry. Student Lotus Sun, and the students in the back row, come with me for a moment. At the back of the classroom, everyone, including Wang Ling, looked at each other in dismay. With a nod from Old Antique, Wang Ling and the others got up and lined up at the classroom door in an orderly fashion. Teacher Pan led them straight to the headmaster's office. At the same time, Su Xingyue was sitting in the principal's office, quietly sipping her tea. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Headmaster Chen immediately stood up from his chair and introduced to Su Xingyue. "Student Su Xingyue, let me introduce you. Now the few people standing in front of you are the elites with the top scores of the various lists in this monthly test. Student Lotus Sun, Student Gu Xuanji, Student Zhen Yuan Jin Yuan, Student Wang Zhen, Student Lu Qingyi, Student Super Chen, Student Hero Gua, Student Fang Xing, and Student Wang Ling, who doesn't look like he's awake." Chapter 1920. Su Xingyue's gaze swept over the crowd, and Wang Ling noticed a streak of blue light in her eyes. If one looked carefully, they would see that it was a string of data rolling around in her pupils. This wasn't an electronic eye or some kind of eye technique, but a kind of scientific magic treasure developed by St. Common. It was a multifunctional scanning contact lens that could be used to survey the terrain or detect combat strength. Magic treasures were one of the key factors for a cultivator to improve their combat strength, so it wasn't cheating to be equipped with one. It was the same in some competitions. As long as there weren't any restrictions on the use of body techniques or specific spells. In general, free competitions. No one would dare say anything if you pulled out a 400-meter-long broadsword, as long as you could control it. Su Xingyue was using her St. Common contact lens to scan everyone's combat strength. After getting the exact data, she stood up happily and directly shook hands with Lotus Sun, who was standing at the front of the line. "Classmate Lotus Sun, I've heard so much about you." Then, out of courtesy, she continued to shake hands with Lotus Sunday. This action was very natural and not deliberate, but it felt like Su Xingyue was deliberately testing something. "Hello, classmate Gu Xuanji." "Hello, classmate Chun." These short words directly pierced Super Chen's and Hero Gua's hearts. This voice was so sweet. It instantly made Super Chen's and Hero Gua's faces flush. Such a coy voice. Was it something people like them could listen to without paying? This was a sugar-coated bullet unique to Su Xingyue. Not only was Su Xingyue beautiful, she was also a godsend for the vocal control party. Although Lotus Sun's voice was also very pleasant, and Super Chun and Hero Gua had even thought that she had gone to voice acting training at the start of school. But once Su Xingyue came, Lotus Sun couldn't compare in the end. After all, they had heard Lotus Sun's voice for most of the semester. But Su Xingyue's sweetness was something new. No one would refuse the wonderful experience of something new. Su Xingyue sent out one sugar-coated bullet after another, and at the same time, observed everyone's reaction. When she shook Wang Zhen's hand, she suddenly sensed that his expression seemed a little nervous. It wasn't because he was shaking her hand, but because he was being watched by some kind of danger, as if he was going to lose his life in the next moment. Big beads of sweat rolled down his cheeks. Su Xingyue immediately smiled. "Classmate Wang Zhen, are you all right?" Wang Zhen didn't even dare look in Lu Qingyi's direction. He knew what he had to do, so he didn't wait for Su Xingyue to shake his hand. He just clenched his fist and bumped it with Su Xingyue's. It's everyone's responsibility to prevent and control the epidemic. Let's not shake hands. This was the first time Su Xingyue had suffered a setback, but she still tried her best to maintain a smile. She suddenly realized that the people from number 60 high seemed to be different from the people she had met before. Except for Super Chun and Hero Gua, who had expected normal reactions. Everyone else was unexpectedly sloppy and ordinary when she interacted with them. Although number 60 high's ranking had risen very quickly in the last 6 months, it still hadn't reached the level of St. Kuz, right? Su Xingyue had thought that everyone from number 60 high would be like Super Chun and Hero Gua, but when she shook hands with them, she realized that the elites from number 60 high who had been picked out were actually all indifferent. It was as if he was used to seeing big scenes. Each and every one of them looked as if they had saved the universe. However, as a student of Sacred College, Su Xingyue still tried her best to maintain her composure. Even if she suffered a setback, she still used her professional expression management skills to control her smile. "Hello, classmate Wang Ling." The last one was Wang Ling. She had noticed him as soon as he entered the door. He was the first person from number 60 high to rise in the ranking list this time. And he had also been present in the previous several large-scale competitions. Although he looked weak and his usual results weren't particularly outstanding, it seemed that number 60 high had won every competition that Wang Ling had participated in. Su Xingyue was particularly concerned about this, and she took the initiative to shake hands with Wang Ling. At the same time, the invisible skin sensor on her palm also operated. This was St. Ke's second piece of black technology. The skin-type gloves were like a thin film on her hand, and no one would be able to tell at all that Su Xingyue was wearing this magic treasure. The skin-type gloves were used in conjunction with contact lenses, and could more accurately pinpoint a person's realm. This was why she had shaken hands with them one by one earlier. This batch of elite students from number 60 high were all at the late foundation establishment stage. To be honest, Su Xingyue was a little disappointed. The average strength of the elites was only at this level. The grade 1 students from St. Ke were all at the middle golden core stage and above. Some could even directly break through to the nascent soul stage in grade 3. At that moment, Su Xingyue was a little disappointed in her heart. But to be cautious, she still followed the plan she had formulated earlier and tested him. The moment she shook hands with Wang Ling, Su Xingyue suddenly felt that her palm was actually rapidly heating up. What was going on? Su Xingyue was utterly astonished by this sudden scene. After confirming that Wang Ling's realm was actually only at the middle foundation establishment stage, she hurriedly let go. At that moment, everyone's focus had also shifted. Even Super Chun and Hirogua came back to their senses from Su Xingyue's gentle gesture, because they realized that Su Xingyue's eyes were actually emitting smoke. The contact lenses and gloves were ruined at the same time. This was a situation that Su Xingyue had never imagined. But Su Xingyue was Su Xingyue in the end. As one of St. Ke's trump cards, she could still advance and retreat with ease even in this situation, and remained calm. "Sorry, I need to go to the restroom." She practically sprinted to the restroom, took off her glasses and gloves, and put them in her storage bag. Because these two things were really too useful, Su Xingyue used them especially frequently. In addition, she often went abroad for competitions, so she didn't have time to take care of them. Who would have thought that she would actually drop the ball at this critical moment? Fortunately, she had already tested out the people from number 60 high. Compared with St. Ke, these elites from number 60 high were still a far cry. For this competition in the core world this time, Wuxia Nation's delegation could bring an extra team of 7 students, and as the number 1 high school, their St. Ke was bound to go. The remaining team of 7 would then be selected from the top 30 high schools in the country. That was right, top 30. Number 60 high was currently ranked 37th in the country, and didn't even qualify to go. It was even reasonable to say that number 60 high and St. Ke had nothing to do with each other. But for some reason, number 60 high's name had actually been included in the official recommendation list this time. So Su Xingyue had been ordered to come to number 60 high almost as soon as the competition was over. Furthermore, the person who had instructed her to come here was none other than St. Ke's current headmaster, Dai Tianchun, also known as Maniac Dai. Chapter 1921. This time, it was a phalanx of selected cultivation high schools representing their countries that would be going to the core world to participate in the competition. Because of the advantage of the entrance, Wuxia Nation could bring an extra team of 7 people in. Thus, in theory, there was no so-called competitive relationship between St. College and number 60 high school, because in the core world, everyone's guns were pointed at outsiders. The most important thing should be how to work together in the core world and bring glory to the country. However, Su Xingyue's visit this time had been directed by Dai Tianchun, the current headmaster of St. Common. Given Maniac Dai's temper, Su Xingyue guessed that the current headmaster might be curious and wanted to sound number 60 high out. Another reason might be that he wanted to share the data he had collected with an allied high school. It was like the relationship between number 60 high and number 59 high. On the surface, they seemed to be competing with each other, but in fact they also had an alliance to work together and make progress. The same was true for St. Common. St. Common might currently sit firmly on the throne of the number 1 high school, But to be able to sit in this position for so long, it was extremely vigilant in times of peace. Even a school as powerful as St. Common had allies. Thus, after receiving the data, Su Xingyue guessed that it was very likely that the data would be shared with the second-ranked high school in the country, Jingmen No. 8 High School. Of course, these were just Su Xingyue's speculations for now. She was actually a little vexed since the contact lenses and gloves that St. Common had given her had been burnt, but she had already come to a conclusion about No. 60 High, so after saying goodbye to Headmaster Chen and Vice Headmaster Golden Lamp Monk, she directly sent a WeChat message to Dai Tianchun. There were only 2 words: nothing to fear. Su Xingyue's visit this time was very sudden, and Headmaster Chen was certainly not completely unprepared. After seeing Su Xingyue off, he continued to lecture Wang Ling and the others in the office. After deliberating for a long time, he said, "Students, as you can see, they don't come with good intentions. After all, No. 60 High was currently the No. 1 high school, and the person it had sent was one of its trump cards. That kind of temperament was unforgettable. Even Lotus Sun's goddess Halo had dimmed considerably. If you had to say, Su Xingyue was more like a female immortal who would only appear in a painting of the secret land of mountains and rivers. But the truth was that most of the people here, except for Super Chun and Hero Gua, were exceptionally calm when facing Su Xingyue. After all, they were all people who had seen the world." To be honest, Wang Ling honestly thought that if Lotus Sun had been wearing that moon-colored glazed hanfu, she would have directly pressed Su Xingyue to the ground and rubbed her. But now in school, everyone was wearing the same uniform. Clothes make the man, and Wang Ling felt that there really wasn't much of a competition without a common set of conditions. At this moment, Headmaster Chen continued, "Perhaps everyone has already guessed that there will be a large-scale competition this time. Moreover, it was a competition that involved countries as a unit. They had to choose students from 2 schools and combine them to be sent as representatives. However, whether we can go or not is still unknown. According to what I know, St. Ku sent Su Xingyue here to probe." "It can't be that St. Ku is testing us, right?" Lotus Sun asked. Student Lotus Sun is really smart. Saint Family was in first place, and their quota for the competition had already been decided. As for the second school, it will be recommended by the higher-ups, or even decided after a comprehensive evaluation. Speaking up to this point, Headmaster Chen was suddenly silent for a while before he said in a low voice, "And we have a lot of opponents. Although the higher-ups have already selected a batch, and our No. 60 High is one of them, the overall quality of the other high schools is better than ours. St. Ku didn't send Su Xingyue here to probe us this time. It's clearly for their allied school," Headmaster Chen said unhurriedly. Although his realm wasn't as high as that of the other high school headmasters, he was probably the only one who could make the other headmasters shudder with fear with his current realm. Figuring out the opponent's intentions and arranging troops had always been one of Headmaster Chen's strong points. In addition, No. 60 High was also an allied school, so Headmaster Chen had long since understood St. Ku's intentions. Everyone in the office now, as well as some of the senior students who are in class and haven't come, are the elite representatives of our No. 60 High. But there are only 7 spots this time, and the final list will need to be decided after a comprehensive evaluation. No matter who is chosen in the end, I hope that no one will hold any grudges in their hearts," Headmaster Chen said. "We're a team. No matter who goes in the end, the glory belongs to everyone." Wang Ling hadn't thought that Headmaster Chen would actually leave them behind to lecture them on this matter. But whether or not they could go now was still unknown, and the key still depended on the final decision of the higher-ups. Their No. 60 High had already miraculously passed the first round of screening, but as Headmaster Chen said, which high school this time wasn't more outstanding than them? In addition, St. Ku had come to gather information for their ally, Jingmen No. 8 High School, so Wang Ling was actually very reassured. He felt that the chances of No. 60 High winning, this time were very slim. Hence, Wang Ling had been quite apprehensive before coming. Now that he had heard Headmaster Chen's introduction, he instantly felt a lot more at ease. First, it was still questionable whether No. 60 High would be chosen. Second, the final list this time would need to be decided through a comprehensive evaluation. and Headmaster Chen probably wouldn't be the one to make the decision. In other words, even if number 60 high was chosen in the end, Wang Ling felt that it might not be his turn to go. He had only done a little better in the monthly test this time, and his extraordinary performance had been short-lived. Number 60 high was now full of experts, and 9 people had already been called to the office. Not counting the elite students in the senior grades, there were at least 30 people in number 60 high who met the current criteria. Wang Ling felt that the probability of hitting the jackpot in a row was too low. No matter what, it wouldn't be him. After school in the afternoon, Wang Ling was packing up his textbooks and planning to go straight home, but at that moment, he saw someone hand him a crispy noodle snack packet. It was Lotus Sun who had handed him the packet, but it wasn't her who had given it to him. Wang Ling, old Pan asked me to give this to you. She said it's your reward this time. Wang Ling was startled. This was the first time he had received such a direct reward from Teacher Pan. What was even more horrifying was that the packet old Pan had given him was actually a new flavor from this month, a golden plastic bag. A limited edition snack shop. He suppressed the pleasant surprise in his eyes, and didn't pretend anymore as he directly tore open the crispy noodle snack packet in front of Lotus Sunday. There was no one else in the classroom, so Lotus Sun boldly stared at Wang Ling's face, which was slightly flushed with excitement. Although it was still expressionless, she felt that Wang Ling was very funny like this. Hey, it looks like there's a card. It's a golden card, Lotus Sun suddenly said. Wang Ling took out the card. He remembered that the new crispy noodle snack had already removed the card collection function for the sake of the environment. Instead, one would scan the QR code in the bag and draw cards online. After collecting the corresponding card set, one could exchange it for something in real life. Cash rewards, virtual props, and even cultivation resources. Wang Ling was bewildered. Why was there a card in this new package? Could it be a bug? He took the card out, tore open the plastic cover, and examined it carefully. Wang Ling was stunned to discover something. This wasn't an ordinary crispy noodle snack card. Instead, it was an invitation from Songhai Vermilion Bird Gate 9 Heavens Tea House. Chapter 1922. The number 1 combat training ground of the academy was an exclusive combat ground for the top 15 elites of each grade. Rivers, lakes, forests, deserts, glaciers. Almost every terrain that could be seen in the real world was covered in this place. The exterior of the stadium was exceptionally grand. From a distance, it was no bigger than a football field. In fact, it was combined with the existing mature space expansion technology of the cultivation world, directly expanding the area of the internal battlefield to as much as 30,000 acres. Furthermore, there were special light sensors set up in all directions, which were used to calculate all kinds of values during the battle. From the big ones to the small frictions during the physical battle, everything was recorded accurately. This kind of combat training configuration was more luxurious than that of many universities in the cultivation world. As the number 1 cultivation university in the country, St. College had truly achieved the integration of science and cultivation through existing scientific and technological means, and had further expanded its influence among high school cultivation universities in the country, and even in the world. After collecting data on number 60 high school, Su Xingyue arrived at the training center that evening. The climate simulation system in the training center completely separated the world inside from the outside world. The current climate simulation system was in clear sky mode, and the simulated sunlight shining down from the ceiling was a little dazzling to Su Xingyue's eyes. Let's go together. As soon as she entered the arena, she saw a young man dressed in the same ancient attire, who spoke calmly at the mouth of a towering waterfall in the arena. He wore a long black tunic with a few silver strands in his long black hair tied up in a bun. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and his heroic spirit mixed with an evil charm gave off a dangerous air that hid a dagger behind his smile. As the waterfall flowed under his feet, Chu Shuling stood as steady as a rock. His figure was thin and tall, like a commoner immortal from beyond the heavens, and he had an indescribable air about him. As soon as he said that, the people lying in wait around him all attacked in an instant. In the blink of an eye, hidden weapons abruptly arrived. Some of them even held air guns and condensed spirit chi into bullets which directly aimed at Chu Shuling's vital parts. In the blink of an eye, Chu Shuling was surrounded by a dense barrage of attacks. He was surrounded by all kinds of light spells, hidden weapons, and even bullets. However, when these flying objects were 8 feet away from him, they couldn't help but stop as they were directly frozen in the air. Chu Shuling's expression was calm and collected. As a trump card that was proficient in all elements, even when he was surrounded, he still maintained his calm and collected demeanor. In the next breath he opened his eyes. There was a sharp glint in his handsome eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, all the flying creatures around him turned to look at him. Wang. All of them returned according to their original trajectories. Su Xingyue knew that this was the move that Chu Shuling was most proficient in. Because he was a trump card that was proficient in all elements, he knew how to use natural elements to create a magnetic field and form an invisible shield for himself. Su Xingyu knew that the duel was over as she heard the screams from all around her. Chu Shuling won once again with her trump card. Is everyone hurt? After the battle ended, Chu Shuling put down his pride and waved his hand to summon a medical floating ball to scan everyone. He had held back just now and didn't go all out. The students who had been sparring with Chu Shuling all had grateful expressions on their faces. President Chu is still the best. We can only watch in the dust. They actually weren't weak. The students who could train in training ground number 1 were all geniuses who were ranked in the top 15 in their respective grades, and were pillars of youth in the country. In the end, they had been completely crushed in their duel with Chu Shuling, and hadn't even had the strength to breathe. This showed how terrifying Chu Shuling's strength was. Same as before, whoever has more than 1,000 battle points in the duel with President Chu, just now can use this to claim a heavenly spirit pill from me later. Su Xingyue smiled. Chu Shuling smiled and chatted with everyone for a while, then very naturally walked together with Su Xingyue, as if they were taking a stroll and chatting. A handsome man and a beautiful woman were very pleasing to the eye. But apart from the people in the training hall, outsiders wouldn't be able to witness this scene. You're back. How's the situation? Chu Shuling asked as he took the bottle of mineral water from Su Xingyue. There's nothing to fear. Su Xingyue commented. Those students from number 60 high are only at the foundation establishment stage. I think Jingba's team should be more than enough to deal with them. Chu Shuling smiled and shook his head. If this was a proper duel, I think Jingba's chances of winning are indeed very high. I'm just afraid that the higher-ups won't just use a competition to review the recommendation for the second high school team this time. A simple competition would be too simple and crude. Then what do you mean? Su Xingyue blinked with an incredulous expression on her face. In this operation, we're fighting on behalf of our country to win glory for our country. 2 different high schools, when they arrive at the scene, must aim their guns at the outside world and compete in unity. Chu Shuling said. What do you think number 60 high relied on to get this far this year? Could it be that he only relied on the strength of Miss Sun alone? Their team index and collective sense of honor index are very high, on par with our St. College. So that's how it is. That's why they were included in the recommendation list as an exception. I was wondering why they weren't even in the top 30. So how could they be included in the recommendation list this time? Su Xingyue looked enlightened. At that moment, she saw Chu Shuling suddenly stop in her tracks and frown deeply at the bottle cap she had just unscrewed. Won a prize? Another bottle? No way, mineral water is also doing this now? Su Xingyue was stupefied. No, another bottle. Chu Shuling handed the bottle cap to Su Xingyue. Su Xingyue carefully looked at the small words inside and read unhurriedly. 9 Heavens Tea House invitation letter? After muttering to herself for a while, Su Xingyue seemed to think of something. I think I've heard of this tea house somewhere. The tea house in the old alley of Vermilion Bird Gate, Chu Shuling replied. Yes, Su Xingyue said. I remember it's a very famous tea house that went viral. Then you probably don't know who the owner of that tea house is. Is it a senior? It's a senior and an almighty. Chu Shuling frowned. But I don't know why this senior is calling me over. Su Xingyue. Then are you going or not? Chu Shuling nodded slightly. Since it's a senior's invitation, of course I have to go. Also, I'm afraid that Jingba's people have also received the same invitation. Help me tell them that if they want to go to the center of the earth to win glory for the country, they must take this invitation seriously and can't be careless. Okay. Su Xingyue agreed. Chapter 1923. Despite Su Xingyue's otherworldly appearance, she was in fact a famous socialite in St. Cork. Almost every school had a person like her, who played the role of liaising with other schools to expand their relationships and improve friendships. Of course, it wasn't free for Su Xingyue to pass on the information. As the number 8 high school in Beijing, which was ranked second in the country, the student union had actually spent a lot of money in order to obtain information about sacred sciences. Fortunately, these prices were agreed upon in advance and paid in one go, so there was no need to worry about the subsequent bleeding. However, as the student council president of Jingmen No. 8 High School, Li Changzhe still had a headache. Heaven essence grass, absolute earth flower, 8-foot jade, 9 desolate lotus seed. These were all rare treasures of heaven and earth that could be found on the market. He had spent a long time to gather all of them for Su Xingyue. It could be said that he had truly shed a lot of blood. But he really didn't have any other choice. After all, No. 8 Jingmen High School was in Jinghua City, and wasn't in the same city as No. 60 High School. If he wanted information on No. 60 High School, it would be most convenient for St. Ke to do it. While receiving Su Xingyue's latest message, Li Changzhe, the student union president of Jingmen No. 8 High School, was staring at the crab shell in his hand, lost in thought. Although he did not know why there were words carved in the crab shell, but the facts told him that there was. Li Changzhe had no idea how it was done. After such a fresh crab was cooked, he opened it and saw that the inside of the shell was actually engraved with the words of the Jiutian Tea House's invitation. Did they take advantage of the crab's inattentiveness to peel off the shell, carve it, and then reinstall it? Li Changzhe felt that it was ridiculous. Moreover, it was obvious that the other party had come prepared, because there were not many people who knew that he liked to eat crabs. What do you think? Do you want to go? A girl with long dark blue hair asked in the student council office. You have to go. Moreover, Su Xingyue had just sent me a message, telling me to take this seriously. Looks like this senior Tung from Jiutian Tea House is indeed not an ordinary person. From what you said, it seems like you know something about it. I went to Songhai City for a networking event with other schools before. He had also heard some rumors about the owner of the tea house, Senior Tung. Some people say that even if any of the 10 generals were to visit this tea house, they would have to be respectful to the owner of this tea house. Oh my God, who is this person? The girl with dark blue hair was stunned. I'm not sure yet. But there was nothing wrong with taking it seriously. Moreover, this senior definitely didn't just invite me. I'm afraid that he has also used his own methods to invite the other people on the recommendation list. Therefore, going to take a look will also help us understand the situation. Li Changzhe furrowed his brows and put on a serious expression. Then he stood up and said, How about this? I'll go over right now. Pack some crabs and eat them on the way. At the same time, on the other side, Wang Ling was lost in thought as he stared at this golden invitation card. Stunned for a moment, he stood up and threw the card into the trash can. Lotus Sun facepalmed. She knew it would be like this. Different people had completely different attitudes towards cards. Faced with a stranger's invitation, Lotus Sun felt that this was the right response. Jiutian Tea House? They didn't know what kind of place this was. What if there was danger? What if they went to a tea house and the manager of the tea house brewed sleeping black tea for them? These were all issues that needed to be considered. Lotus Sun felt that young people should have the ability to think independently and distinguish danger, as expected of classmate Wang Ling. In fact, before giving the crispy noodle snacks to Wang Ling, Lotus Sun had also received an invitation from Jiutian Tea House. Furthermore, the invitation had been given in a very outrageous manner. She didn't know how the other party had done it, but the other party had actually directly carved words on the milk candy Wang Ling had given her. That was to say, the person who had given the invitation had to be someone close to her. There was most likely a mole in the villa she lived in. Wang Ling had given her a full sack of these milk candies last time, and she had stored most of them in the bank's fresh-keeping vault. She usually only kept 3 on her as a backup in case of danger. To be able to steal her milk candy so precisely, carve words on it without anyone noticing, and finally return it to her. Furthermore, he had also calculated when she wanted to eat the candy, and predicted that she would open the one with the words carved on it. Only someone close to her could have done all of this. Furthermore, Lotus Sun felt that she had definitely received some kind of psychological suggestion. Otherwise she wouldn't have suddenly thought of eating the milk candy. This was a precious milk candy that Wang Ling had given her. After seeing the words carved on the milk candy before, she had actually been hesitating about what to do. Now she knew. Who cared about Jiutian Tea House? She would eat the milk candy first. At Songhai City's Vermilion Bird Gate Jiutian Tea House, Tung Luken was fishing by the pond in the tea house's backyard. Jing Huqiu had come looking for him again. This was his first time in the backyard, and he was stunned to find that the pond in the backyard was connected to the 5 lakes and 4 seas. Holding a bamboo fishing rod, Tung Luken looked very much like Jiang Taigong fishing. It was just that this pond was connected to the 5 lakes and 4 seas, so it wouldn't be too strange to catch anything. How did they react after receiving the invitation? Tung Luken seemed to have already known why Jing Huqiu had come this time, and got straight to the point. Elder Tung, you have incredible foresight. St. College, Jingba, those higher-ranked schools are paying special attention. Li Changzhe from Jingba is already on the way, and will arrive today. He's quite proactive. Chu Shuling from St. College just probed the streets, and didn't directly come in. AI, as expected of the #1 high school. This cautious style is worth learning. Tung Luken nodded, especially satisfied with Chu Shuling. Could it be that they already know Elder Tung's identity, which is why? There's no way they know who I am. But given their experience, it wouldn't be strange for them to guess something. Tung Luken shook his head slightly and smiled. That's right, what about the other high schools? I want to know how they've reacted. The other high schools have already sent people to find out the location of Jiutian Tea House. Only. Saying this, Jing Huqiu paused, his expression a little unsightly. Tung Luken asked, only what? Make it clear. Jing Huqiu hesitated for a bit, but still took out a crumpled golden invitation card from his sleeve. I found this in number 60 High's trash. Elder Tung, they've gone too far. In my opinion, number 60 High's quota should be directly revoked. They weren't in the top 30 in the first place, and making an exception for them is already a great blessing. Is that what you think? Tung Luken immediately laughed and looked at Jing Huqiu with a "you're too young" expression. This old man thinks that this kid from number 60 High has the most personality. Then now? This Wang, I suddenly can't remember his name. In any case, this classmate Wang, you should personally pay him a visit. Invite him over, said Tung Luken. Chapter 1924. Jing Huqiu didn't understand what was going on at all. He was just a foundation establishment student, so why did Elder Tung care so much about him? Number 60 High School had been selected as an exception to begin with. If Elder Tung hadn't put number 60 High School on the list back then, it was likely that number 60 High School wouldn't have even qualified for further selection. The qualification to go to the core world this time was very hard to come by, and it was a move to win glory for the country. On the list of the second 7-man team, the top 30 high schools were secretly surging. Everyone wanted to ask for permission to fight. In fact, the invitation from the Nine Heavens Tea House was also a disguised test of the intelligence-gathering ability of these universities. If this group of people knew who Elder Tung was, they would definitely not refuse the invitation. To put it bluntly, so many colleges and universities had placed great importance on this, but in the end, this person had made an exception and lost his invitation letter. If it was lost, then so be it. Tung Luken actually wanted him to personally go and get it. Jing Huqiu could not hold it in any longer. He was the dean of the Nine Heavens Essence-Seeking Yard. His position was comparable to that of the deputy leader of the 100 Schools Alliance, and was even more powerful than the headmasters of cultivation high schools. When all was said and done, he was also one of Ajua's immediate superiors. In the end, he was sent to invite a Foundation establishment student. What was more, it wasn't like he was completely unaware of this mascot from number 60 high school with the surname Wang. He was just a person who had relied on luck to get to the champion position in a few competitions. Why was Elder Tung so concerned about him? Logically speaking, Jing Huqiu's heart was crumbling a little. If it wasn't for Tung Luchen's unyielding attitude and his insistence that he personally invite Wang Ling, he would have been extremely unwilling. But now he really had no other choice. After all, Elder Tung had concealed his identity in the Vermilion Bird sect for many years, and had already found many students. Jing Huqiu could only think that perhaps his eyes were not good enough to see the mascot's excellence. He didn't know if it was because they had to make time to prepare for the competition, or if it was because Teacher Pan was in a particularly good mood. But Grade 1, Class 3's homework today was pitifully small, and Wang Ling finished it all at school. Now that he was home, he started to feel empty, which he hadn't felt in a long time. Was this what it felt like to not do homework for a day? Sure enough, he was still a child who loved to learn. With nothing to do, Wang Ling naturally could only scroll through his phone, Weibo, TikTok, and various other public platforms to kill time. At first glance, Wang Ling saw the trending news that the system had recommended. Rock singer Mr. Wang Banbai is about to hold a concert. At that moment, his heart skipped a beat. He immediately knew that something had happened to the entertainment industry again. He didn't know if it was because the entrance to the core of the earth had been opened, but Wang Ling realized that buildings seemed to be collapsing everywhere in the entertainment industry this year, and every now and then there would be a major earthquake. Wang Ling felt that this was a kind of backlash from the entertainment industry. In the end, it was because people had been too lenient with their standards for celebrities and idols in the past. Now that Huaxiu Nation was gradually growing stronger, and the country was prosperous and its people were at peace, the people were beginning to have rich thinking skills. At the very least, she would no longer be immersed in the world of an idol alone. She would no longer associate herself with a celebrity idol. Therefore, the standards for these artists and idols were raised. In addition, these celebrity idols nowadays especially like to create public personas for themselves. In the past, there were scholars, and now there were immortals and so on. The more extreme a public persona was, the more complete the collapse would be. Thus, it was better not to randomly create public personas, because if one wasn't careful, things would often go awry. Wang Ling felt that he could be used as a model case study today. If he had always insisted on keeping his scores low, there wouldn't have been so many problems this time. But he had fallen for Wang Ying's nonsense before the monthly test this time. But Wang Ling himself couldn't figure it out. He had only scored a little higher than usual, so how had he risen to first place in the whole grade? This was too outrageous. While he was feeling gloomy, Audiobook suddenly sent him a text message about the plan for the core of the earth. Because Audiobook had no right to make decisions on this matter. If Wang Ling hadn't asked him to help investigate, Audiobook probably wouldn't have known about this plan at all. Thus, the core of the earth competition this time had been kept a secret. The higher-ups hadn't planned to announce it to the public at this stage, so there wasn't any news about it online at the moment. Shifu, I've asked around a lot, and finally found out what's going on. This time, the core of the earth is actually a competition for the division of resources between various countries. But considering that if the various countries send their almighties to fight it out, it might be a devastating blow to the core of the earth. So after a joint discussion, we came up with a plan to select elite high school students as representatives and send them to the core of the earth for the competition. The final winner of the competition will have the right to divide resources into a limited area, as well as 10% more land than the other cultivation countries. After reading Audiobook's message, Wang Ling nodded thoughtfully. So this was the plan. Indeed, although true immortals weren't much in Wang Ling's eyes, if these true immortals really fought, they could destroy several large cities. The resources in the core of the earth were precious to begin with. If these almighties really went to the core of the earth to fight it out, in the end there might not be any resources left. So it was indeed safest to send high school students whose average realm was between the foundation establishment and golden core stages. They were just high school students after all. They weren't that destructive. At this thought, Wang Ling felt even more ashamed in his heart. Then all the more he couldn't send him. What if he directly detonated a nuclear bomb in the core of the Earth? The reason why the Almighties weren't allowed to compete was to protect the core of the Earth. In the end, if Audiobook was sent there, it would be no different from installing a nuclear bomb directly at home. Now that he knew the whole story, Wang Ling's heart was on the verge of collapse. He had a bad feeling about this. Although the probability of him being selected as a member of the 7-member team was very low, he still felt like he was being watched. Just then Wang Ling, who was sitting at his desk, suddenly looked out the window. It wasn't just Wang Ling. Even Loopy Toad sensed a powerful aura suddenly appear at the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. Peak level 8 true immortal. Loopy Toad shook its fur and looked out the window calmly, as it immediately made an accurate judgment on the realm of the newcomer. Earth had already upgraded, which meant that the overall realm of human cultivators would take a big leap forward in the future, and be on par with that of the domain of the gods. But at the end of the day, there were still very few human cultivators who could reach peak level 8 true immortal. So who was this man, and why had he suddenly appeared at their doorstep? Chapter 1925. Chu Shuling was practically the first to learn that Li Changjia had directly arrived in Songhai City on the immortal boat, thanks to the big data clues that St. Common had collected from various competitions over the years. Through contact with students from other schools in competitions, and through the data collected from St. Common's contact lenses and invisible gloves, the specific cultivation data of the students from other schools was compiled into a place called the Data Pagoda. Then the artificial intelligence implanted in the Data Pagoda would use the collected data to assess the basic talent of these high school students, and calculate their basic cultivation growth in the next few years without the help of any resources. Finally, the high school students would be graded. SSS was the highest level, followed by SS, S, A, B, and C. This assessment system had been independently developed by St. Common. The most astonishing thing was that the data they collected wasn't limited to the students' basic data. They could even collect their spirit chi attributes. Furthermore, they could use the spirit chi monitoring tower that St. Common had set up in Songhai City to collect the specific movements of these high school students. As the president of the student union at St. Common, Chu Shuling naturally had the right to use the Data Pagoda. Thus, as soon as Li Changjia arrived in Songhai City, his contact lenses received an electronic map from the Data Pagoda. There was a rapidly moving black dot on it, and a detailed analysis showed that this red dot was Li Changjia himself. Chu Shuling was reading leisurely in Songhai City Library. He deliberately didn't bat an eyelid, and after waiting for a while he looked at his phone on the table. Buzz. Buzz. Sure enough, his phone vibrated. Did Li Changjia ask you out? Su Xingyue asked as she spread the book open and covered one side of her face. Chu Shuling nodded. This was to be expected, but Li Changjia had asked to meet him in 2 hours. He and Su Xingyue had just returned from Vermilion Bird Sect and confirmed the location of Jiutian Tea House. But Chu Shuling wasn't in a hurry to go in. He wanted to wait and see what Li Changjia and these people would do for the rare spot this time. Chu Shuling. He asked to meet me in 2 hours. Su Xingyue was suspicious. He's already in Songhai City, and he still needs 2 hours? Who are you going to meet? That's normal. Chu Shuling wasn't surprised. He has friends in Songhai City, and as far as I know, Sword God Academy is also fighting for a spot in the core world this time. Their student council president and vice president have a good relationship with Li Changjia. That Yi Jiang? The one who suffered from Lotus Sun's attack in the previous match? Yes, I was injured. Chu Shuling nodded and said concisely. At this point, Su Xingyue immediately laughed loudly. Ha ha ha. I know him. I heard that even now he still hasn't fully recovered. He can't stop his psychological rehabilitation. It's going to be difficult to fight for a spot in this state. Su Xingyue laughed hysterically. After all, Yi Jiang's incident was famous in Songhai City's cultivation school circle. It was not an exaggeration to call it a social death scene. It would take a long time for Yi Jiang to recover from the psychological treatment. Even if he recovered, Yi Jiang would probably escape from Earth and live on another planet. The current Yi Jiang was like the designated comedian in the cultivation school circle. Although he was indeed very strong, many people couldn't bear the thought of that match between him and Lotus Sun. It was a little difficult. However, Su Xingyue also knew that other than Yi Jiang, the God of Sword Academy was not without experts. For example, their vice president of the student union was worth being wary of. In Saint Intelligence's data pagoda, Vice President Gong Xian of the God of Sword Academy was one of the few students in the country with an SSS rating. Number 8 Jingmen High School's uniform was very unique. All the students in the school wore hoodies in a hip-hop style. The layout of the clothes was similar to number 60 High School's, and there was a Pekingese dog logo on the right side of the chest. Pekingese Jingba, this was a perfect homonym. It was said that the designer who had designed this uniform had his salary deducted on the spot because of the homonym. However, the overall design of the uniform was very unique, and the students liked it very much, so they continued to use it. Jingmen number 8 High School's uniform was indeed quite unique. In addition to the Pekingese dog logo on the right chest, the words on the back were part of the school motto of Jingmen number 8 High School. Because the 16 words were too long, each student's uniform only displayed 4 of the 16 words. The words on the back of Li Changzhe's uniform were unceasing self-improvement. As soon as he landed, Li Changzhe saw a youngster in a cap and a long black robe waiting for him at the exit of the Immortal Boat Yard. He recognized at a glance that this was God of Sword Academy's uniform, which was completely different from Jingba's exaggerated hip-hop style. God of Sword Academy's conservative style made their uniform look especially plain. It was all black, and on the chest was a logo of 3 crossed swords. Brother Xian. Li Changzhe was very excited when he saw who it was, and hurriedly went over to shake hands with the youngster. Gong Xian slapped his hand away with a look of disdain on his face and said in a cold voice, "Let's talk on the way." Actually, his relationship with Li Changzhe wasn't that good. It was actually Yi Jiang who had asked him to pick Li Changzhe up this time. He and Li Changzhe had only met a few times before, but he hadn't expected Li Changzhe to naturally become familiar with people, and to stick close to them with a face as warm as the sun. "Brother Yi, are you feeling better? In addition to taking care of my business in Songhai City, I also wanted to see him," Li Changzhe said. "The president hasn't fully recovered yet." Gong Xian sighed and replied. "He said that as long as he sees a sharp object, his butt hurts." Li Changzhe. "Doesn't that mean it's very difficult to use a sword? But isn't swordsmanship his forte?" Gong Xian. "I'm a little better now, but it hurts faintly. I can still bear the pain and use a sword. It's not like before, when I couldn't move when I saw a sharp object. This psychological barrier can only be overcome slowly." AI, that Lotus Sun was really ruthless back then. I heard from Chu Shuling that number 60 High was also selected this time, and I had a bad feeling about it. Don't underestimate number 60 High. Gong Xian frowned and looked at Li Changzhe as he said solemnly, "If nothing unexpected happens, number 60 High will probably be the most troublesome opponent among all the high schools competing for a spot this time." "I know, that's why I came to Songhai in such a hurry," Li Changzhe said. "I thought that the other schools had to think of a way. Anyone could go, but at the very least we couldn't let number 60 High go. They're only ranked 37th in the country. What qualifications do they have to go, don't you think?" Chapter 1926. Gong Xian frowned slightly at Li Changzhe's confident words. He wasn't in a hurry to refute Li Changzhe's words, and the two of them went to a brightly lit roadside barbecue stall. Earlier on the Immortal Boat, Li Changzhe had suggested finding a roadside stall like this so that everyone could sit down and chat, as well as have a late-night snack. Of course, the students who had been summoned here were the same as Li Changzhe's allies. All the schools were sharing intelligence in order to squeeze number 60 High out of the final selection this time. There were plenty of school representatives. Apart from Li Changzhe from number 8 Jingmen High School, there was also a representative from Xiulan High School from Winter City. There were even more local schools. Tianyuan High School, number 1 Devil Subduing High School and Titan High School, which Wang Ling had run into in the 9 Dragon Mountains competition. These were all cultivation high schools ranked in the top 30. and they had gathered together to share intelligence for the final selection in the core world this time. As he ate a skewer, Li Changzhe said, "It seems that the higher-ups don't want to decide on the final list through a competition. Otherwise, given the overall strength of our high schools, which of us isn't stronger than number 60 high school?" "No, I think it might be better if there's no competition," Gong Xian said at that moment. At the same time, he looked at Gao Tianming from number 1 Devil Subduing High School and Zhu Hanyun from Titan High School. To be honest, number 60 High School wasn't easy to deal with. As old rivals who had fought number 60 High School before, Gong Xian felt that the other high schools didn't have as much say as they did. After all, they had all lost to number 60 High School in the 9 Dragon Mountains competition, and hadn't done as well as number 60 High School in all aspects. Although they also felt that number 60 High School's victory was very strange, they hadn't been able to find anything wrong with it after the competition. Hence, Gong Xian had always felt that it was a good thing that the final list wasn't decided through a competition. Otherwise they wouldn't even know how they had lost. Number 60 High School's headmaster Chen wasn't strong overall, but he was good at arranging troops and plotting against others. Headmaster Chen Tianxiang had personally led the team in the battle on 9 Dragon Mountain back then, and had immediately scared the other headmasters into forming an alliance to deal with number 60 High School. At that time, it was very much like this very moment. "Has anyone received an invitation from 9 Heavens Tea House?" At that moment, Li Changzhe suddenly asked a crucial question. Because of the sharing of information, everyone had nothing to hide, so they took out their tokens. Just like Li Changzhe's crab shell, the rest of the people were holding their favorite things. The senior from Jiutian Tea House had secretly left an invitation mark on them. After Li Changzhe finished reading, he immediately nodded. It seems that the decisive point is this 9 Heavens Tea House. That senior gathered so many of us student representatives there. He probably wanted to choose through a face-to-face meeting. I just don't know how. Sparring the Tao, Zhu Hanyun said as he stroked his chin. A place like a tea house always felt inexplicably compatible with the preaching of scriptures and Tao. Perhaps, but we can't fathom the deeper meaning behind the seniors of the 9 Heavens Tea House. I don't know the background of that senior, but Chu Shuling told me that I must take this invitation seriously, Li Changzhe said. So it was Chu Shuling who told you about it. Everyone's eyelids twitched upon hearing this name. No wonder Li Changzhe had made such a big fuss about coming to Songhai City several hours ago to set up an alliance to fight number 60 High. Feelings were like this. That Chu Shuling was currently the president of the student union among the new students at Sacred Sciences, and was also the number 1 trump card. He had far more information than anyone else present. After a long silence, Gao Tianming's tall and thin body suddenly moved. He stared at the engraved wooden puppet in his hand and said in an extremely cold voice, "Since everyone has received an invitation, I'm sure that everyone will be invited at the same time." The invitation clearly stated the time of the visit. Everyone took out their tokens to check, and realized that the tea house would be visiting at 00:00 the next day. That 9 Heavens Tea House senior had asked them to visit at midnight. But Vermilion Bird Sect usually closed for business at 2300 hours. That was to say, they would have to use their own methods to enter Vermilion Bird Sect first, which would be the first test. Everyone present was an elite high school student, so it probably wouldn't be difficult for them to break through Vermilion Bird Sect. The important thing was what kind of test they would encounter later on. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and for a moment didn't know what to do. Li Changzhe ate 2 roast crabs contentedly and wiped his mouth with a wet tissue. How about this? I also have an appointment with Chu Shuling alone. I'll go see him first. Everyone, gather at the entrance of Vermilion Bird Sect at 11 o'clock tonight. If I have any new information then, I'll definitely tell you everything I know. That's all we can do. Everyone nodded. Everyone was deeply worried about the next test. But after this brief discussion, everyone's goal was clear. That was to do their best to fight for a spot, and absolutely not let number 60 High participate. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Wang Ling and Loopy Toad noticed that a man at the peak of rank 8 True Immortal had suddenly dropped by the villa's entrance. To be honest, Jing Huchio's heart was on the verge of collapsing. This was the first time he had ever put down his status to invite a foundation establishment student. Although he had no idea what on earth Elder Tung was up to, when all was said and done, a higher-ranking official could crush someone to death. As his immediate superior, Elder Tung had sent him over, so of course he had no choice but to come. But now that he was at the entrance of the Wang family's small villa, Jing Huchio was dumbfounded. He didn't know what to say. Furthermore, it was already so late. What if the child's parents didn't let him go out? Everything was a problem. Thus, Jing Huchio stood at the entrance like a wooden man. It didn't seem right to knock, but it also didn't seem right not to knock. Of course, it wasn't like Jing Huchio was completely unprepared. He knew what the youngsters in this house were passionate about, which was why he had sent out the invitations in the form of crispy noodle snacks. Now that he thought about it carefully, Jing Huchio suddenly felt that maybe he hadn't expressed himself clearly enough, or maybe he had given them too little. Jing Huchio sighed deeply. Helpless, he could only open his windbreaker to take out the limited edition crispy noodle snacks he had prepared in advance and spread them out on the ground. These limited edition crispy noodle snack plastic bags were all different colors and had laser patterns on them, which shone like gems. Jing Huchio hesitated about whether to knock or not. At that moment, the door in front of him opened on its own. Jing Huchio was horrified. This crispy noodle snack was super effective. Chapter 1927. Jing Huchio did not expect it to be so easy to invite the young man out of the house just by playing to his liking. He looked at the young man who still looked a little childish, and his cheeks twitched. He could not help but let out a sigh. In the end, he was still a child. If he couldn't even accept such a small benefit, it would be difficult for him to become a great person in the future. Jing Huchio was extremely unwilling to have him, the dean of the Essence Search Courtyard, personally invite someone. At the same time, he had his own way of identifying talents. In his opinion, Wang Ling couldn't be considered a talent at all, and was far worse than any of the young geniuses he had ever seen. However, Elder Tung wanted to see him, so Jing Huchio had no choice. Even though he despised Elder Tung, he did not show it. He looked at Wang Ling kindly and bowed with his hands in front of him. "Hello, classmate Wang. I wonder if classmate Wang has received an invitation from Nine Heavens Tea House? Our curator would like to see you." Wang Ling had already scattered the seasoning packets, and was sizing Jing Huchio up at the same time. To be honest, he had no intention of going out at all, but Jing Huchio had lined up so many limited edition crispy noodle snacks on the ground just now. Looking at their shiny golden packaging, he really couldn't help it. His hand reached out involuntarily, and he was done for. As the saying goes, it's hard to take advantage of others. Since he had accepted the benefits from others, it was his duty to cooperate with them. From Jing Huchio's attire, it wasn't hard to tell that he was one of the higher-ups of the Gravity Core project. If he were to forcefully refuse now, who knew what kind of harassment he would face in the future? Wang Ling sighed in his heart. In the end, he nodded helplessly. At 2300 hours on the evening of January 14th, the evening market in front of Songhai Vermilion Bird Gate had already ended 10 minutes earlier. As the main gate of the Vermilion Bird Gate closed, a large number of high school students wearing their school uniforms gathered at the gate. The Vermilion Bird Gate street that had already quieted down was now completely dark. Only the Nine Heavens Tea House in the old alley still had two ancient lanterns lit in front of it, as if it was waiting for their arrival. After confirming that the last staff member had left the Vermilion Bird Gate, everyone knew that the operation had begun. They needed to break through the Vermilion Bird Gate and arrive at the Nine Heavens Tea House before midnight. Although the staff on duty had already left, they still had to be careful of the electronic balls that were patrolling around the Vermilion Bird Gate. Those were the scientific devices that guarded the entire Vermilion Bird Gate. Although it was not stated in the rules, it was the correct choice to not disturb the electronic warning spheres. Just as everyone was about to move, a young man in a black robe suddenly leaped out and took the lead as he walked toward the main entrance of the Vermilion Bird sect. "It's Chu Shuling. He's here." Someone recognized the silhouette of Chu Shuling, the president of the Sacred Sciences Academy's student union. However, no one dared to imagine that Chu Shuling would be so daring. The electronic alarm ball was patrolling near the main entrance of the Vermilion Bird Gate. Under such circumstances, he actually dared to openly walk in. All the students in the dark held their breaths at the same time. They wanted to see how Chu Shuling would break through the Vermilion Bird Gate. However, to everyone's surprise, when those warning electronic balls passed by Chu Shuling, they didn't make any sound. What's going on? Did he hack into the system ahead of time? Some people were puzzled. I don't think so. If he did, why didn't he just turn off the warning spheres? Li Changzhe thought for a bit and said, "Don't forget, Chu Shuling is proficient in all elements. He can change his body's magnetic field through the elements, which is also his usual method." I think so too. On the side, Sword God Academy's Gong Xian nodded. By changing the magnetic field, so that the frequency of his own magnetic field is the same as that of the warning spheres, the warning spheres will misjudge him and think that Chu Shuling is one of them. Hearing this, the other students cursed in their hearts. What a freak! Chu Shuling was probably the only one who could do something like this. They watched as Chu Shuling walked into the tightly shut Vermilion Bird Gate in a dignified manner. She used a wood element Dharma art to fuse with the Vermilion Bird Gate, and easily entered the Vermilion Bird Gate. After that, everyone began to think of a way to break through the Vermilion Bird Gate. They were all elite students from the top 30 cultivation high schools in Huaxiao Nation, so it wouldn't be difficult for them to break through a city gate. The key was not to alarm these warning spheres. This could be considered a slightly more difficult test, but overall it wasn't a big deal. Gong Xian held the spirit sword in his hand, and drew a streak of sword qi in the air. After calculating the landing point of the parabola, he used the sword qi to construct a narrow sword qi bridge. Then, he quickly put away the spirit sword and rode the sword qi upwards. Like a skateboard, he easily crossed the gate of the Vermilion Bird sect. The warning spheres most likely had a magic artifact warning mechanism. If you directly rode a spirit sword over, even if it was a spirit sword, the warning spheres would definitely respond to a magic artifact that was in operation. But it was different if you first used the spirit sword to draw out sword qi to build a bridge for yourself. This was also an opportunistic smokescreen. Li Changzhe secretly admired everyone's methods of crossing the sea. Some used the earth burrowing technique, some used the magic technique to shrink their bodies, and some directly used the magic technique to stick to others. There were also some who directly inflated their bodies into a floating human balloon, and flew over the Vermilion Bird sect. Interesting. Li Changzhe deliberately didn't make the first move. He stood in place and admired for a long time. It wasn't until he finished his cup of crab milk tea that he patted the dust off his butt and stood up. Of course, it wasn't difficult for Li Changzhe to break through the Vermilion Bird Gate. He formed a hand seal and directly disintegrated his body into a puff of mist, which then flowed in through the crack in the Vermilion Bird Gate. The white mist finally reformed behind the Vermilion Bird Gate, and transformed back into Li Changzhe's appearance. At that moment, almost everyone had already gathered inside the Vermilion Bird Gate. Li Changzhe did a rough head count, then smiled. Let's go take a look at Jiutian Tea House. Chu Shuling should have already gone in. Everyone looked at each other and nodded. They then followed Li Changzhe's footsteps as they groped along the dark ancient street, and finally confirmed the location of Jiutian Tea House, which had 2 lit lanterns at the entrance. What they didn't expect was that Chu Shuling was standing in front of Jiutian Tea House, and her attitude was completely different from when she had entered the Vermilion Bird Gate. For some reason, Li Changzhe felt that Chu Shuling was a little angry. Buzz. In the next moment, a ball of raging fire ignited on Chu Shuling's palm. Meteor flaming palm? Chu Shuling recognized this palm technique, and it was an advanced third-stage palm technique. It could easily shatter boulders. There was a loud bang. Chu Shuling's palm accurately hit the door of Jiutian Tea House. However, this strange door of the tea house seemed to have the ability to absorb the power of the elements, and it immediately dissolved Chu Shuling's palm. The door of the tea house didn't budge in the slightest, but Chu Shuling staggered from the impact. The huge impact bounced Chu Shuling away, and he flipped a few times in the air before landing on the ground steadily. When Li Changzhe, Gong Xian, and the other students saw this scene, they couldn't help but be shocked. They immediately understood. The real test this senior gave them was not to break through the Vermilion Bird Gate. Instead, it was to break through the door of this tea house and enter inside. Chapter 1928. Facing the Nine Heavens Tea House, everyone was deep in thought. Li Changzhe thought that Chu Shuling had already entered the tea house. In the end, even the most talented high school student was trapped outside the tea house. Li Changzhe was shocked. It seemed that it would be difficult to break through the door of the Nine Heavens Tea House with an ordinary spell. Chu Shuling's meteor flaming palm was swallowed up as soon as it got close to the door. Of course, Chu Shuling didn't give up completely. His expression darkened, and he looked like he was going to break through the door by himself. "Big brotherly, what should we do?" Everyone around him asked. Even though they could be considered outstanding among the younger generation, facing Chu Shuling, they couldn't help but tremble with fear. To many high school students, Chu Shuling was a top-notch expert. Apart from Li Changzhe, no one else dared to talk to him directly. "Don't worry. Brother Chu has his own ideas. Let him try first. With Brother Chu's high realm, if he can't break through, then we have no hope at all. At a time like this, we should stand aside quietly and watch Brother Chu fight. We can also learn from his battle experience," Li Changzhe said. His words sounded like those of an old fox. There was almost no fault to be found. In fact, it made Chu Shuling feel a little comfortable. But the problem was that after this speech, the pressure fell on Chu Shuling. Li Changzhe had put such a high hat on him in front of so many people. If he still couldn't think of a way to break through, then he would be the one embarrassed. Crack. Suddenly, a shocking electromagnetic arc appeared between Chu Shuling's palms. In an instant, Chu Shuling's aura skyrocketed. The strong oppressive feeling made everyone around him take a few steps back. Everyone was shocked. This was already the battle strength of a peak late-stage golden core cultivator. Rumor had it that Chu Shuling would soon break through to nascent soul, but no one believed it. Now, after releasing his aura, the oppressive feeling it brought directly proved how powerful Chu Shuling was. No wonder he was the #1 cultivator among high school students. At that moment, the electromagnetic field in Chu Shuling's palm surged. He controlled the magnetic field and turned the electromagnetic field into electric arcs, accurately striking his own body. This was a technique that used electromagnetic fields to stimulate acupoints, causing Chu Shuling's muscles to swell up in a short instant. Chu Shuling untied the upper half of his black robe and tied it around his waist. The bulging muscles on his upper body let out sizzling electric arcs. Those muscles were like sponges that kept absorbing water. After they swelled up, they were compressed back into Chu Shuling's body. In a short period of time after repeated training, Chu Shuling's body was finally maintained at a body that wasn't overly muscular. Using electromagnetism to stimulate acupoints to achieve 3 stages of compression? Brother Chu is so fierce. Li Changzhe clicked his tongue as he watched from the side. At the same time, he couldn't help but applaud. He wasn't stingy with his compliments. At the same time, he was astonished by Chu Shuling's exaggerated electromagnetic control, as expected of a genius who was proficient in all elements. Boom. In the next moment, Chu Shuling made his move. After 3 stages of compression, his entire body was as firm as a rock. This time, he didn't use any spells to attack. Instead, he used pure physical strength to fight against the tea house's door. This was a punch that had accumulated an extreme amount of power. It tore through the air towards the tea house's door. With Chu Shuling's current realm, such a punch could split mountains. His speed was too fast. The surrounding people couldn't even see the trajectory of Chu Shuling's punch. This punch had already accurately landed on the tea house's door. However, just when everyone thought that the tea house's door would be destroyed by Chu Shuling's punch, a golden vortex suddenly appeared on the door. Chu Shuling's fist seemed to have punched into a ball of cotton. Then his entire body was sucked into the door along with his punch. I see. Seeing that Chu Shuling was sucked into the Nine Heavens tea house's door, Li Changzhe also understood. He immediately smiled. It seems that this tea house's door has a strength standard. If the tea house's door recognizes one's strength, one will be directly sucked in. After understanding the rules, The remaining people were all eager to give it a try. To put it bluntly, this was a test of strength. They couldn't use magic directly, but they could follow Chu Shuling's example and use magic to stimulate their bodies, increase their physical strength, and finally force their way in. At the same time, Li Changjia thought that they actually didn't need to be as strong as Chu Shuling's. There had to be a middle ground. If they had to reach Chu Shuling's level to get in, most of them would have to squat in front of the tea house. After a brief moment of thought, the high school students outside the tea house began to show off their abilities. Their method was the same as Chu Shuling's. First, they used magic or other means to increase their strength. Standing in front of the door, Li Changjia tried to turn himself into mist again and enter through the crack in the door. In the end, after he entered, he was directly sent back to his original spot. This confirmed Li Changjia's idea that whether or not they could enter the tea house was essentially determined by the strength test. At the same time, Jing Huqiu and Wang Ling also arrived at the scene. The two of them stood on the eaves and quietly watched everything unfold in front of them. Wang Ling ate a crispy noodle snack as he watched the crowd in front of him try their best to break down the door. Big brother Wang. Jing Huqiu opened his mouth. That's right, he directly called Wang Ling big brother with an expression that looked like he wanted to cry but had no tears. Entering the Vermilion Bird Gate was actually also a test, but when he brought Wang Ling to the door, he realized that there was no time, and Wang Ling didn't seem to be making a move. In order to not waste time, he had no choice but to use his authority to directly take Wang Ling past the Vermilion Bird Gate. He was truly convinced by Wang Ling, and he couldn't find a reason to be convinced. Calling Jing Huqiu big brother Wang in such a sorrowful tone already showed how helpless he was at the moment. As the head of Essence Search Yard, he had seen all sorts of extraordinary geniuses, but now he had to coax Wang Ling to participate in the competition. If word got out, where would he put his old face? Chewing his crispy noodle snack, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He felt that this group of people was very strange. Since they had invited him to the tea house, they had sealed the door with a secret spell and wouldn't let him in if his strength wasn't up to standard. This behavior was no different from taking off one's pants to fart. At that moment, Wang Ling stood on the eaves and looked down at the crowd doing their best to show off their abilities, and felt a little helpless in his heart. Big brother Wang, I've already helped you pass the Vermilion Bird Gate. How about you participate in this door-breaking operation? Jing Huqiu was about to cry. He was very anxious that Wang Ling wouldn't participate from beginning to end. Door-breaking operation? Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. Oh, it turned out that he didn't need to ensure that the tea house's door was intact. He could even break it down. Okay, he understood. Chapter 1929. Wang Ling was still observing the situation. He had already completely understood the secret spell that had been used on Nine Heavens Tea House's door. This was a test of physical strength. In other words, as long as you didn't use magic, you could use other physical attacks to break in. RIP. A girl in a ranger-style school uniform was clearly aware of this as well. She stood in front of the tea house's door and pulled back her bow. The golden arrow was simple and unadorned. It scraped against the air with an ear-piercing sound as it traveled through the air in an incomparably beautiful trajectory. Finally, it nailed itself firmly to the door of Nine Heavens Tea House. After a moment, the door directly swallowed the arrow. Good arrow. It's only a sliver away from the predetermined standard, and it'll be certified. Jing Huqiu sighed as he stood next to Wang Ling in the distance. From a distance, he recognized that this young archer was Zhang Linyan from Sakura Sky High School. Sakura Sky High School was ranked third among the cultivation high schools in the country, which was also the school that Xian Qianqing had been at before he transferred. The students who could study there all had extraordinary family backgrounds and identities. However, Sakura Sky High School students were generally very low-key, and the school adopted a closed education system. That was to say, although they were among the top 3 in the nation, they were very different from schools like St. Sciences and Peking University, which were active on social media channels all year round and used traffic to create stars. Sakura Sky High School's students were generally ruthless and kept a low profile. Zhang Linyan in front of them was the best example. She hadn't said a word from beginning to end, and seemed to have no presence. But in fact, she had amazed the world with one brilliant feat. It was clear that Zhang Linyan hadn't used all her strength in that arrow just now. Her black hair fell to her waist as she raised her bow again, looking valiant and formidable. In that instant, the breathtaking feeling of Zhang Linyan's attack even overwhelmed the exuberant Li Changzhe. In front of the tea house, everyone held their breath as they stared at this scene. Rip! This was the second arrow. The wind howled and tore the earth apart, and the flags on the old-fashioned gatehouses on the old street fluttered in the wind. Some of the signs couldn't even withstand the pressure of the wind, and were directly blown apart by the arrow. This time, Zhang Linyan's arrow successfully pierced the door of the Nine Heavens tea house, and she was immediately verified. Her entire body turned into particles of light and disappeared on the spot, then was sucked into the vortex formed in front of the Nine Heavens tea house. Wang Ling's expression was cold. From beginning to end, he and Jing Huqiu had been standing on the eaves. He already understood what Jing Huqiu meant, and it didn't matter if they broke down the door. But after all, there were still other people taking the test here. Based on his years of education, he decided to wait and see. After all, once he broke through the door, the group of people behind him would no longer have the chance to participate in the test. As expected of Sister Zhang, this archery skill is superb. Li Changzhe sighed from the bottom of his heart. He continued to display his simple and smooth style. Wang Ling didn't dislike Li Changzhe, and even thought he was a little interesting. He had already thought of a way to enter the tea house. After all, he could break down the door, so he didn't have to worry about a lot of things. What he needed to think now was how to smoothly break down the door. After all, with Jing Huqiu watching him, it would be too arrogant of him to just go up and smash the door. That wasn't good. So after careful consideration, Wang Ling raised one hand. Seeing this scene, Jing Huqiu couldn't help laughing. Classmate Wang, if I'm not mistaken, this move of yours should be called the basic attraction spell, right? Seeing this scene, Jing Huqiu couldn't help but drop his forehead into his hand. He was a professional, and also the head of Jiutian Essence Courtyard, so he wouldn't laugh so easily, unless he couldn't help it. He could more or less guess what Wang Ling was thinking. It was obvious that Wang Ling wanted to use the basic attraction spell to manipulate a rock or something else to smash down the door, thus achieving his goal of entering Jiutian Tea House. Jing Huqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He even thought that Wang Ling was too naive. How much force would it take to use the basic attraction spell to throw an object at the door? Forget smashing the door. Even hitting someone wouldn't hurt too much. AI, who knew what old Ting saw in this kid, Jing Huqiu felt very depressed. He was sighing with his head down when he suddenly heard a loud explosion at the entrance of the tea house. Jing Huqiu didn't even have time to react to what had happened before the ground in front of the tea house was already enveloped in smoke and dust from the explosion. What on earth had happened? Jing Huqiu was stupefied. He had just been distracted for a moment, and in the end, the door of Jiutian Tea House had directly exploded. What was going on? He was simply stupefied. The other school students in front of the tea house were just as stupefied as him, because they had just seen an unbelievable scene. Just a minute ago, under everyone's watchful eyes, they had seen Li Changzhe's entire body directly float up, and then slam his head against the door of Jiutian Tea House. Using his head to directly slam the door with immense force was very much in line with Li Changzhe's usual idiotic style. F***K. Did Brother Li slam his head against the door? How hard must his head be to be able to smash it open? Some high school students exclaimed in disbelief. Maybe he ate too many crabs and has more calcium, so his head is harder, someone said. But I really didn't expect him to use his head to smash the door. Also, the force was too strong. The remaining force of Sister Zhang and Senior Brother Chu's attacks seemed to have been absorbed by the tea house's door. Why did the door directly collapse when it was Brother Li's turn? Gong Xian was also shocked. After a blank stare, he said, maybe the absorbed force hasn't been digested in time. So when Li Changzhe smashed his head against the door, the force overflowed. Hiss, I think that's a little far-fetched. Titan Hai's Zhu Hanyan said. What did you think of? Demon subduing Hai's Gao Tianming asked. No, I just felt a trace of a familiar aura when Brother Li used his head to smash the door. But that aura has now disappeared. Looks like it wasn't an illusion. I also felt the same way. Gao Tianming nodded with a deep expression. Everyone discussed spiritedly in front of the collapsed door. What they couldn't understand was that the moment Li Changzhe's body floated into the air, the expression on his face had clearly been one of horror. It seemed that he hadn't been prepared, and didn't even have time to ask a question before he directly slammed into the tea house door in the next second. So now, when Jing Huqiu came back to his senses, he saw this huge explosion in front of the tea house. The tea house door used for the test had been blown down. Furthermore, 2 people had directly disappeared from the scene. One was Li Changzhe, who had slammed the door, and the other was Wang Ling, who had been standing next to Jing Huqiu all this time. Chapter 1930. Jing Huqiu had no idea how on earth Wang Ling had succeeded in breaking through the door. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. In the end, he came to the conclusion that Wang Ling's primer spell most likely hadn't attracted an object, but a person. In other words, Wang Ling had used the primer spell to send himself in, and had predicted that Li Changzhe would use his head to break through the door, so the moment Li Changzhe broke through the door, Wang Ling had sucked himself into Li Changzhe's body. That had to be it. Jing Huqiu was flabbergasted. He felt that there was no other reasonable explanation. So now had he already gone in? Jing Huqiu looked at the time. It was now 23:50 in the evening, less than 10 minutes until the original time for breaking through the door. But the door was already in pieces. If the first batch of invited students hadn't been able to complete the test, they would definitely complain. Jing Huqiu had to first think of a way to coordinate with them, and then arrange for a follow-up test. At the very least, he had to let the remaining people split the last 10 minutes equally to complete the test. Jing Huqiu had no way of contacting Old Tung in advance, but he had finally completed the task of sending Wang Ling in, even if he didn't know exactly how Wang Ling had gotten in. But when it came to Wang Ling, he had always held him in contempt. Before breaking through the door of the tea house, Wang Ling had already noticed with his king's eye that the passage behind the tea house door wasn't connected to the tea house itself, but to an alternate space. It was similar in nature to a united core world. To put it bluntly, this alternate space was like a giant beehive, each part of which had been provided by a different person, and in the end, had been combined into a giant space. Furthermore, Wang Ling could sense the nature of this united core world. This was a giant space that had been synthesized using modern scientific and technological means, and was a world that had been created through continuous research into the intrinsic spirit field combined with modern cultivation technology. To put it simply, this world was like a giant jigsaw puzzle, but it was very difficult for one cultivation country to complete it. Thus, Wang Ling concluded that this world had been born from the joint efforts of various cultivation countries. Each country had provided a fragment of the world, and then pieced it together to form this united world. In some sense, this was also a manifestation of the value of a community of shared human destiny. Wang Ling was a little astonished. He actually hadn't expected modern cultivation technology to actually reach this point. Of course, in terms of spatial hardness, this artificially synthesized joint core world's sturdiness had yet to reach the standard of a normal core world. Perhaps it was because it was pieced together, causing its structure to be unstable. However, such a large world was already very shocking. Wang Ling and Li Changzhe had come in together, but after entering this strange space, he felt that Li Changzhe had been teleported away, and his sense of time and space had become blurry. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing in a primeval forest. Li Changzhe was nowhere to be seen, but he wasn't too far away. If Wang Ling wanted to, he could directly follow his aura and meet up with Li Changzhe. At that moment, he looked up at the sky, which was a screen of text. The first line read, "Welcome to the Spirit Realm." The second line read, "Countdown return to 2359. 59, Spiritual Realm?" Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. This was probably the name given to this world by the people who had created it. In fact, it was essentially an core world. However, it was possible that cultivators on Earth hadn't reached the highest realm yet to be able to create an core world. so they still couldn't understand what on earth the thing they had created using scientific means was. Wang Ling chuckled in his heart, feeling that this was a little ironic. So he, Li Changzhe, Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan were the first to enter the spirit realm, and they were faced with this huge primeval forest. Could it be that they were supposed to explore this place? Survive for a day? Wang Ling didn't think that was possible. He had already participated in many survival games. Even if he didn't use the Great Fortune spell, his natural gas luck would naturally give him an advantage. At that moment, facing the vast primeval forest in front of him, Wang Ling was a little at a loss. After coming to the spirit realm, he noticed that a ring of dust had inexplicably appeared on his wrist. With a light touch, the dust would fall off, and he didn't know what it meant. Closing his eyes, Wang Ling expanded his spiritual senses. After locating Chu Shuling, Zhang Linyan and Li Changzhe, he decided to move closer to them first. He was afraid that someone was watching him, so he didn't dare use the teleportation spell, and walked over. In front of a small river, Wang Ling saw Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan from a distance. They had found Li Changzhe, but he was unconscious and foaming at the mouth. Why did he faint? Zhang Linyan frowned and motioned for Chu Shuling to carry Li Changzhe away. Chu Shuling had a look of disgust on her face, but she didn't complain at all. It was only then that Wang Ling awkwardly realized that these three people seemed to have an electronic bracelet on their wrists. It should be something issued by the government, and was used to monitor the data of the operation. That was to say, Wang Ling also had one furthermore. It had been put on the moment he had passed through the door of Nine Heavens Tea House. Unfortunately, this electronic bracelet was too fragile, and hadn't been able to withstand Wang Ling's test. And it had been destroyed before he had even landed. That was why Wang Ling saw a ring of dust on his wrist. It was the corpse left behind after the electronic bracelet had turned to dust. Wang Ling sighed. He didn't know if he should pay for damaging a government item, but now he finally knew why Zhang Linyan and Chu Shuling hadn't been able to find him. There were too many factors that could interfere with spiritual senses in this vast primeval forest. Although the two of them were already considered very strong among young people, they still couldn't use their spiritual senses as freely as Wang Ling could to directly locate someone. On the other hand, this electronic bracelet had actually been issued by the government to confirm a person's position. But it had now been destroyed by Wang Ling, which gave him a headache. There was no other way. Wang Ling could only imitate them. He casually twisted off a rattan and wrapped it around his wrist, then used the King's Eye illusion spell to directly replicate an electronic bracelet. Because Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan hadn't noticed him from start to finish, Wang Ling felt very embarrassed. He followed the two of them until they finally reached their campsite in the spirit world. It was a very simple-looking wooden hut with an awe-inspiring Wuxia national flag fluttering in the wind above it. Chapter 1931. This was the only building that Wang Ling could see with the naked eye. It was a very simple wooden hut, but it gave him an infinite sense of security, especially when he saw the cultivation country's flag fluttering in the wind. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and awe. Wang Ling felt that most of his peers probably felt the same way when they saw this flag. While he was in a daze, there was a whoosh as an arrow pierced through the air through the window of the wooden hut. Wang Ling's face was expressionless as he raised his sword fingers to firmly clamp down on the arrow. He deliberately released his aura to Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan. And just as Wang Ling had expected, these two people weren't too vigilant, and Zhang Linyan very quickly fired the arrow as a test. Wang Ling slowly walked out from behind the thick tree with the arrow in his hand. When Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan in the other wooden hut saw the same electronic bracelet on Wang Ling's wrist, their expressions were also abruptly blank. Judging from their reactions, they should have known that there would actually be 4 people entering the spirit world this time, but they clearly hadn't expected the 4th person to actually be someone from number 60 high. There hadn't been a single person from number 60 high at Vermilion Bird Sect earlier, so how had Wang Ling come in? Zhang Linyan felt it was very strange, but Wang Ling was clearly their teammate now, so she had no choice but to speak up and invite him in. She was the first to break the deadlock. "Student, come in." Throughout the entire process, Chu Shuling maintained a pondering expression on her face. Although Zhang Linyan hadn't used her full strength in that arrow just now, the speed of the arrow was still extremely fast. An arrow shot by an early-stage gold core cultivator was actually caught by a foundation establishment cultivator. Chu Shuling vaguely felt that something wasn't right. Wang Ling frowned. Ignoring the strange look in Chu Shuling's eyes, he directly followed Zhang Linyan into the wooden hut. Wang Ling was a little stunned by the scene in the wooden hut, because there was actually an elevator in the wooden hut that could hold up to 20 people. Furthermore, the elevator only had one down button, which meant that there was another space under their feet. In addition, on the wall beside the glass elevator, there was a 32-inch LCD screen. Aside from displaying the countdown for their trip, there were also the words, Underground Trial Ground Number 1, 412 written on it. Stop looking. It's obvious that our mission this time is to take the elevator down to the so-called Underground Trial Ground Number 1. Zhang Linyan said. The 412 on the side should be referring to the number of people. This training field needs at least 4 people to activate, and the maximum number of people is 12 at a time. Wang Ling nodded secretly. It felt like this layout was a bit like a dungeon in a game. There were 4 of them here, so they could start this dungeon quest. This also explained why Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan seemed like there was a 4th being in the spirit realm. After all, with the minimum number of people, no matter how the higher-ups arranged, they would definitely ensure that at least 4 people would enter the spiritual realm this time. There shouldn't be anyone else coming in. Chu Shuling said coldly. Both he and Zhang Linyan actually didn't know that Wang Ling had already destroyed the door outside, but the invitation clearly stated that the deadline was 0:00 in the real world. It had already been more than 10 minutes since they had arrived in the spiritual realm. Calculating the time, the rest of the people probably wouldn't be able to make it here in time. For now, only the 4 of them could enter. But even so, they still lacked Li Changzhe's combat strength. Judging from the swelling on Li Changzhe's head, Zhang Linyan guessed that Li Changzhe had probably rammed his head in. He had rammed his head in, but in the end he had knocked himself out a little reckless. But that was Li Changzhe's usual style. Wang Ling had no choice but to help Li Changzhe up and carry him on his back. For him, this didn't take much effort. You don't seem to like talking, but I didn't expect you to be so warm-hearted. Zhang Linyan instantly liked Wang Ling a little more for taking the initiative. Wang Ling. In fact, it wasn't that Wang Ling wanted to carry Li Changzhe, but in this situation he couldn't directly use healing spells to reduce Li Changzhe's swelling, otherwise he would look a little guilty. On the other hand, he felt that he was the main reason Li Changzhe had fainted. He was just carrying him for a while, and along the way he would look for an opportunity to wake Li Changzhe up. Chu Shuling crossed his arms the whole time, maintaining his usual aloof and disdainful attitude. He didn't know which number 60 high school student Wang Ling was, but number 60 high school was after all ranked in the lower 30s, and Chu Shuling had never considered this kind of ranking an opponent. Come on in. He sighed, pressed the button for the elevator, and walked in first. He then glanced at Wang Ling, who was carrying Li Changzhe. You're from number 60 high, right? Don't hold us back. Wang Ling remained silent and completely ignored Chu Shuling's words. As a result, the atmosphere in the elevator dropped to freezing point. Caught in the middle, Zhang Linyan felt like she was stuck between a rock and a hard place. She could only try to find a topic to talk about. This Li Changzhe, don't you think he's stupid? In her heart, she hoped that Li Changzhe would wake up sooner. After all, she wasn't familiar with Wang Ling and Chu Shuling, and Li Changzhe was the only one who could talk to Chu Shuling. On the other hand, in a team environment, a member of the atmosphere team was needed to lighten the mood. And Li Changzhe clearly belonged to this atmosphere team. Wang Ling actually felt a little sorry for Zhang Linyan. He could tell that she was trying very hard to find a topic to talk about, but Chu Shuling was cold and aloof, and she didn't like to talk. She was like a penguin caught between 2 pieces of frozen soil. So embarrassed that she could dig out a map of the entire spirit world with her toes in the elevator. It was only a few dozen seconds of elevator ride, but for the first time, Zhang Linyan felt like there was no love left in the world. Ding. You have arrived at Underground Trial Field Number 1. As the elevator doors slowly opened, Wang Ling and the others were once again horrified by the scene in front of them. The elevator doors were embedded in a huge tree, and in front of a huge bonfire, a group of young foreign cultivators with all kinds of hair and eye colors were doing all kinds of exotic dances around the bonfire. They were wearing the uniforms of their respective schools. Some of their uniforms were dirty and tattered, but from the armbands on their arms, it was still possible to tell which cultivation country they were from. Chu Shuling looked at the scene in front of him in astonishment. He remembered hearing about something called the Spirit World Project from Dai Tianchun, the headmaster of St. College. Rumor had it that it was an independent secret land set up by the Fine Search Institute of various countries to quickly groom the younger generation of cultivators. Chu Shuling never thought that this would actually be true. Of course, there was one thing he couldn't understand. It was that this group of foreign cultivators in front of him seemed to have been in this world for a very long time. What on earth was going on? I understand. At that moment, Zhang Linyan frowned and said solemnly, "The countdown outside is actually a countdown to clearing the stage. We have to clear the stage within the time limit. Otherwise we'll have to stay here until the next group enters the Spirit World trial field and clears it." Chapter 1932. When Zhang Linyan came to this conclusion, the surrounding high school students all looked at her strangely. In fact, they admired Zhang Linyan's keen insight and analytical skills. After all, based on previous experience, it had taken several groups of cultivators from different countries a long time to figure out the current situation. Of course, there had also been language problems. But Zhang Linyan was different. As soon as she landed, she had directly analyzed half of the situation with her keen insight and observation skills as an archer. Not only that, both Chu Shuling and Zhang Linyan were able to communicate without any obstacles. They had experience in many competitions abroad, and were already very proficient in language communication. Furthermore, after arriving here, many of the trapped high school students were Chu Shuling's fans. "My God, Chu Shuling, it's you. We're saved now, oh my God." A high school student whose skin was as black as a coal briquette sighed with emotion in heavily accented English. Chu Shuling actually didn't have any impression of this person, but after all, they were in front of so many people, and he was very concerned about his image. Furthermore, in order to extract useful information, he immediately changed his tense expression and started to communicate with the crowd in a very friendly and cordial manner. Zhang Linyan's forehead was covered in sweat. It turned out that Chu Shuling could talk. He changed his attitude faster than flipping a page. Thinking this, she glanced at Wang Ling on the other side. After putting Li Changzhe down, he sat alone next to Li Changzhe, still looking as if he wasn't interested in anything. Zhang Linyan finally understood what was going on. Chu Shuling was pretending to be mute. Wang Ling was a real mute. But for some reason, Zhang Linyan felt that she liked Wang Ling more. Chu Shuling wore countless masks on his face, and only someone like Li Changzhe, who was naturally familiar with him, could communicate without any obstacles. Wang Ling and Chu Shuling felt tired just talking half a word more. Both of them were outstanding high school students in Wuxia Nation, and in a very short time, they were able to obtain a lot of useful information. Chu Shuling in particular had obtained a lot of useful information from that briquette high school student from an African cultivation country. Wang Ling pretended to be indifferent, but in fact, he was secretly sorting out everyone's information. With his mind-reading ability, he didn't need to ask at all to have a pretty good grasp of the current situation. They were the 10th group to enter trial ground number 1 in the spirit realm. Before they arrived, the total number of students who had entered the trial ground had exceeded 92. These 92 people came from 9 different cultivation countries. Their current location was a desert oasis, and the current test for everyone was to leave this oasis, cross the desert, and reach a distant city, and the mission would be considered completed. It sounded like a simple task, but so far, none of the previous 9 groups had been able to complete it. From the time the first group entered until now, they had been trapped for a total of 16 days, relying on the resources in the oasis to survive until now. Moreover, as more and more people were trapped, the resources of the desert oasis were also facing the situation of exhaustion. Wang Ling, He felt that the mission setting was quite profound. Wang on Wang with Ling. To this point, this oasis was like a comfort zone, and the test of the mission was to make the elite high school students and cultivators from all over the world strive to leave this comfort zone and break out on their own. Unfortunately, the people before him had all failed. Sai, before you came here, the 9 of us set off from different directions, trying to explore the city outside the desert. As long as one team succeeds, the mission will be considered complete. At that moment, Wang Ling heard someone say to Zhang Linyan with a sigh, "But you still failed." Zhang Linyan asked, "Have you summarized the reasons?" First, this desert has a certain level of spiritual sense interference ability. There's a high probability that perception-type spells will fail in the desert, and once they fail, it will mislead and interfere with one's judgment. The foreign student replied in fluent English. Secondly, during the entire journey, each of us must keep a clear head. Once someone falls, they'll be sent back to this oasis and start all over again. And the third point is that we keep feeling that the consumption of spiritual power here seems to be greater than before. Although we don't know the reason, every movement we make seems to double the consumption of physical strength and spiritual power. Hearing this, Zhang Linyan suddenly felt puzzled. She frowned and then carefully looked at the spirit fruit on the banana leaves beside the bonfire. It was collected from the oasis by high school students and cultivators from various countries. They were all fruits that Zhang Linyan had never seen before. Chu Shuling also noticed these fruits. He squatted down and took a bite, then immediately spat out the pulp and threw it into the fire along with the fruit. "These fruits are delicious, and they're not poisonous. You're wasting them like this," the Briquette brother said with a pained expression. "It's better if you don't eat these spirit fruits," Chu Shuling said. Chu Shuling said, "Haven't you noticed that although these spiritual fruits can temporarily relieve your tiredness, they will consume your spiritual power and physical strength faster? It's very likely that the reason you can't get out of the desert has something to do with these strange spirit fruits." When the trapped high school students and cultivators heard Chu Shuling's tiger-like analysis, they all looked enlightened. As expected of Chu Shuling, the #1 genius among Saint Intelligence high school students. Some people sighed with emotion from the bottom of their hearts in a different language. This kind of fancy bootlicking put Chu Shuling in a very good mood. "Leave it to me, I'll definitely get out." At that moment, Chu Shuling swept his gaze over everyone. Without another word, he directly summoned his spirit sword and got ready to move. "You're alone?" Zhang Linyan was shocked and asked hurriedly. "I'm more than enough." Chu Shuling walked like the wind as he looked at Zhang Linyan confidently. It wasn't until then that Zhang Linyan realized the pride and arrogance overflowing from Chu Shuling. This person didn't just look down on Wang Ling and Li Changjia. He actually didn't care about Zhang Linyan at all. Zhang Linyan knew that she wouldn't be able to persuade Chu Shuling on her own. He wasn't leaving any way out for himself at all. Zhang Linyan was secretly astonished. If Chu Shuling collapsed on the way and was teleported back, wouldn't he be dead on the spot? But it was clear that Chu Shuling didn't think that would happen at all. Extremely confident, he directly stepped on his spirit sword and flew off like a shooting star in one direction. Then, after 3 hours had passed, everyone saw Chu Shuling turn into a shooting star again as he fell from the sky above the oasis. Moreover, he landed precisely in front of Wang Ling and kowtowed to him. "Wang Ling." Chapter 1933. Wang Ling had never thought that Chu Shuling would give him such a big bow. Although the atmosphere had already frozen when Chu Shuling had fallen head first into the ground, the fact that she had returned without any success just explained one thing. That was, it was impossible to break through the desert on the outskirts of the oasis by brute force alone. No matter how much spirit energy you had, if you wanted to be a stubborn lone wolf, you would still end up in failure in the end. After all, the minimum number of people who could enter this map was 4. That was to say, the higher-ups had definitely already sent people to carry out professional experiments to come up with the conclusion that 4 to 12 people were needed. It would be hard to pass if there weren't enough people, but there could also be problems if there were too many people, like the resources in this oasis being consumed at an accelerated rate. As the representative team of Huaxiao Nation, when someone had recognized Chu Shuling, they had thought that they would definitely be able to pass. But now that Chu Shuling had failed, everyone felt a little evil. Zhang Linyan dropped her forehead into her hand. Even she felt a headache coming on. Li Changjia was still unconscious, and in the end, Chu Shuling had paid the price for her recklessness by fainting as well. At this critical juncture, these two people were definitely unreliable. At that moment, she looked quietly at the youngster in front of her and realized that he was also looking back at her. He still had those standard dead fish eyes that couldn't arouse the slightest bit of interest, and the same impending yet indifferent attitude. She felt that she was becoming more and more curious about Wang Ling, and she really wanted to know how he had opened the teahouse's door. After waiting for a while, and seeing that everyone was in low spirits, Wang Ling finally couldn't restrain himself anymore. Seeing that Wang Ling's gaze had been fixed in one direction, Zhang Linyan also looked in that direction. She straightened Chu Shuling, who had already been lying flat on the ground, and finally found a very fine wound on the back of her neck. It was the mark of a beating, and because Chu Shuling was wearing ancient clothes that covered her neck, it was impossible to see it unless she took off her clothes. When she looked at Wang Ling again, the young man had already looked away. Was this a coincidence? Zhang Linyan was suspicious, and somehow felt that Wang Ling was deliberately reminding her. But this new discovery still caused an uproar among the people present. Zhang Linyan heard many of her foreign friends praise her in English, and they all admired her meticulous observation skills. Amazing, classmate Zhang. You actually found such a fine wound. As expected of a famous high school student in Huaxiao Nation, only Zhang Linyan's face was bright red. To be honest, she was quite embarrassed by the praise, but the truth was that it was all thanks to Wang Ling that this matter had been discovered. After the new discovery, the atmosphere became lively again. Everyone started to check their stamina. No one found the same injury on their stamina as Chu Shuling. In that case, Chu Shuling wasn't sent back to the oasis because she ran out of spiritual power. Instead, she was knocked out by someone or a spirit beast. There were so many groups of people marching in the desert, but none of them had ever seen any other living beings. Chu Shuling actually ran into one. This also meant that perhaps Chu Shuling was already very close to the city in the desert. That was why there were creatures guarding the city around the desert. Of course, all of these were just guesses. However, following these guesses, they could at least prove one thing. The time limit to complete the mission within 24 hours was not as strict as he had imagined. After all, it had only taken Chu Shuling 3 hours to solve a problem that no one had encountered before. The key was still to find a way. Using Chu Shuling as a unit of measurement, Zhang Linyan estimated that under normal circumstances, it would take 3 to 8 hours for someone like Chu Shuling to reach the level guarded by the living beings without any interference. She wasn't sure about Wang Ling's level of spirit energy, but if Chu Shuling could do it in 3 hours, Zhang Linyan felt that she could do it in 5 or 6 hours, while others might take longer. We need to reformulate our plan. Also, whether we can break through this will require everyone's full cooperation, Zhang Linyan said after taking a deep breath. She had the meticulous thinking of an archer and a natural sense of direction. Even if she didn't use perceptual spells, Zhang Linyan could still use other methods to determine her position. So for Zhang Linyan, there were only 2 problems she had to deal with. One was the replenishment of her spirit energy, and the other was how she should defend herself against those creatures that might attack. Compared with Chu Shuling's stubborn lone wolf style, Zhang Linyan was actually better at arranging the resources she had at hand. At that moment, Zhang Linyan subconsciously followed Wang Ling's gaze to the neatly moving ants on the ground carrying food back to their nests, as if she had suddenly realized something. That's right, the spirit injection spell, Zhang Linyan said as she picked up a cobblestone. This was a very basic spell. Simply put, it was to transfer the spirit energy in one's body to someone else or to concentrate it on an object, so that the object would be filled with spirit energy in a short period of time. The spirit energy infused in this way could in fact be extracted. There were so many people in the oasis now. As long as each of them infused a bit of spirit energy into this cobblestone, it would be a huge amount of energy. This was tantamount to creating a spirit energy power bank on the spot. Of course, this kind of temporary power bank also had a drawback, and that was that the spirit energy would dissipate bit by bit over time. Thus, Zhang Linyan had to calculate the amount of spirit energy that would dissipate. Just as Zhang Linyan was getting ready to carry out her next plan to leave the oasis, a gust of wind suddenly blew, and the leaves on the trees swayed in the wind. More than 1,000 pinhole cameras hidden in the layers of leaves were focusing on Zhang Linyan from different angles. Of course, a very small number of them were still focused on Wang Ling. Wang Ling had long been aware of this, which was why he hadn't made a move, and had instead used hints to warn Zhang Linyan. He had initially thought that as long as he kept a low profile, these cameras wouldn't focus on him. But the people who had come in as part of Group 10 were impressively the focus of the cameras. Whether it was him or the unconscious Li Changjia or Chu Shuling, they all had fixed cameras, which was a little annoying. At the same time, outside of the cameras, in the command post of Jiutian Academy, in front of a monitor, Tung Luken, the head of Jiutian Tea House and the chief commander of the Earth's Core Project, was stroking his beard as he looked at the image on the monitor. His face was very calm, without the slightest ripple of emotion. At that moment, a man wearing a bamboo hat stood behind him with a murderous aura. The black gauze in front of the hat completely covered his face. At that moment, he had already pressed the muzzle of a spirit power revolver called Golden Wind against Tung Luchen's waist. Old Tung, I hope you don't play any tricks. I want you to release your most powerful map spirit beast and get rid of this bunch of people. I'll give you 1 more hour. If no one among these high school students is dead by then, I'll shoot one of your academy's people every 10 minutes. Chapter 1934. The criminals who had suddenly broken into Nine Heavens Elite Search Yard's command center were very strong, and they had clearly come prepared. Fortunately, as employees of the Elite Search Yard's command center, although this kind of sudden situation wasn't common, they had rehearsed it before. Everything seemed to be under the control of the criminals, but it was actually still under control. Everyone kept a cool head and explained in silence. All the staff members of the Elite Search Yard crouched on the ground with their hands over their heads, holding their breaths as they waited for Elder Tung's next command. The criminals were very strong, but given Elder Tung's realm, there was no way he wouldn't be able to counter them. This shrewd old man didn't say a word, as if he was waiting for something. At the same time, he completely cooperated with the criminals, and increased the difficulty of Trial Field Number 1 through the Elite Search Yard's Spirit World operating system. This is already the highest difficulty. After adjusting, Tung Luken said, "As you know, these are the most outstanding students from all over the world. There's a limit to the difficulty of the spirit beasts in Trial Field Number 1, and they might not be able to kill them, unless there's a way to dispatch a higher-level spirit beast to Trial Field Number 1. Then do it." The voice of the leader of the criminals came from under the bamboo hat, and he pointed his gun at Tung Luchen's waist again. "I'm warning you, Elder Tung, don't play tricks," Tung Luken said expressionlessly. "It's not that I don't want to cooperate, but this is how the original system was set up. I can't directly adjust it. I can only operate according to the existing system, and dispatching spirit beasts from the advanced trial field requires a new program code. However, even if everyone here is gathered together, it won't be possible to complete this code in a short period of time, unless we have outside help." "Who are you looking for?" "His surname is Wang, and he's President Chi's favorite student." Tung Luken laughed. "Don't worry, he doesn't have any realm. He was not a cultivator. Also, you don't have to worry about him divulging information. After all, he's just an ordinary person without any cultivation. You can kill him easily." The man in the bamboo hat was silent for a while, as if he was thinking. In the end, after a fierce internal struggle, he finally agreed to Tung Luchen's request. "Then I'll give you another half an hour. 1.5 hours, that's the deadline. Otherwise, all of you here will die. Elder Tung should be well aware of the destructive power of this golden wind in my hand at close range." This was a clear threat. Of course Tung Luken was well aware of the golden wind's power. Given his realm, he wouldn't be injured by a bullet. However, if the bullet hit his body, the spiritual energy triggered by the recoil and explosion would be enough to raise the entire command center, as well as everything within 1,000 kilometers to the ground. Nine Heavens Search Yard Spirit World Operating System was a top secret. Tung Luken was also very clear about the goal of this group of villains. In fact, regardless of whether they could fulfill their request or not, the bullet would still be fired. Their original goal was to find one of the high school students in the group. The high school demon cultive sect cultivators team to kill, to who they wanted to kill them all. The reason why he wanted to annihilate this batch of high school students who had just entered was just a way to cover up his real target. After all, these high school students would all die. Even if the news broke out in the end, the public would not pay attention to the specific actions targeted at a particular high school student. They would only define it as an infuriating large-scale terrorist action. Therefore, Tung Luken knew what to do. He had roughly guessed the actions of this group of villains in his heart. However, he did not stop them directly. On the contrary, he followed their wishes and started to increase the difficulty of trial ground number 1. No one noticed. At that moment, Tung Luken was paying special attention to the 1,000-odd surveillance cameras connected to the oasis, and the few that were closely watching Wang Ling. Countdown, 1948. 49. There were less than 20 hours left until trial field number 1 was cleared. Wang Ling sat under the tree for more than half an hour with Chu Shuling lying on his left and Li Changjia on his right. The number 1 and number 2 high school geniuses in the country were lying on either side of him like goalkeepers, and for a moment, Wang Ling's mood was exceptionally complicated. In the past half an hour, in addition to secretly guiding Zhang Linyan, he also counted the leaves in the oasis one by one. Actually, Wang Ling had already noticed when they had just entered the oasis, and knew that these leaves were equipped with tiny pinhole surveillance devices. It was just that he had pretended that nothing had happened, which made it seem like he hadn't noticed it at all. While sitting on the ground, Wang Ling had been looking out of the corner of his eye for the cameras monitoring him. Although there weren't many of them, Wang Ling was sure that the people in front of them had been paying attention to his movements. In other words, Wang Ling's sixth sense was telling him that he was probably already being watched, and that the person watching him probably wasn't a low-level one. He sighed endlessly in his heart. He could only blame himself for being too useless, actually going out just because of a few crispy noodle snack packets. Why couldn't he control his own claws? But there was no other way now. Since he was already here, he could only pretend to cooperate and complete the mission. In any case, there were a lot of people here, and there was bound to be someone he could use as a temporary scapegoat. In Ajua's absence, he could only develop new people. Then he realized that Li Changjia and Zhang Linyan were actually pretty good. One was more simple-minded, while the other was more astute than Li Changjia, but was a very sensible person. After a few hints from him, Zhang Linyan actually received a little bit of a signal, but Wang Ling's expression had been too natural, and she had no direct evidence to prove that he had been hinting at her. It was like how the protagonists in many famous suspense novels always had a few godly supporting characters who inadvertently hinted at their modus operandi. So Wang Ling's original plan was to use Li Changjia and Zhang Linyan to cover for him at the same time. But the problem was that Li Changjia, this guy, actually hadn't woken up yet. The bump on his head had already gone down, and Wang Ling had treated it when no one was looking when he had carried Li Changjia on his back. Logically speaking, Li Changjia should have woken up long ago. But Li Changjia still hadn't woken up. Wang Ling felt that there was probably only one reason. What was the saying? You could never wake up a person who was pretending to be asleep. In fact, Li Changjia had woken up when he had been lying on Wang Ling's back. But when he remembered that he had fainted after crashing into the tea house's door, he instantly felt like he had lost face. The most important thing was that he had always been hostile toward Wang Ling, and in the end, it had been Wang Ling who had carried him in when he had fainted for a moment. Li Changjia's heart was filled with guilt at this kind of elegant and noble conduct. He felt that it was better for him to lie flat on his back. It would be too embarrassing if he woke up. Chapter 1935. Covering for Wang Ling had in fact been Wang Ming's task from the very beginning, and Wang Ling had been targeted. As an older brother, Wang Ming naturally had a certain level of vigilance, so the moment Tung Luken had found him, Wang Ming had almost immediately become suspicious. Although this elder Tung had concealed himself very well, and had left a few of the thousands of surveillance cameras for Wang Ling, Wang Ming didn't know if it was because of his brother Khan intuition, but he could still clearly sense Tung Luchen's special intentions. While writing the system according to Tung Luchen's instructions, Wang Ming split off another brainwave to communicate with Xia Yi next to him. The two of them had known each other for a while now, and it could be said that they had a tacit understanding of each other, and they immediately started contacting people to assist Wang Ling. At the same time, as one of Lotus Sun's good sisters, Xia Yin didn't forget to send Lotus Sun a copy of the message. Classmate Wang Ling is under suspicion, and that senior's background isn't ordinary. After receiving the message, Lotus Sun stared at the phone screen with a tight frown. What should we do? Hasn't he been fine all these years and never been exposed? Sun Yinger said in surprise. You can't avoid getting your shoes wet if you always walk by the river. Maybe it's because classmate Wang Ling has participated in too many competitions recently. Lotus Sun guessed. Wang Ling had already done his best to restrain himself in these competitions, big and small, and had basically erased his memory of everything that should have been erased, but the official competition records wouldn't disappear. No matter how little Wang Ling's contribution to the team was, his name was still on the official list in the academic administration system. Lotus Sun felt that it was perhaps that official record that had planted the seed of suspicion in Tung Luken. But there was no point in saying all this now. This was the so-called counter-soldiers with arms, water with an earthweir. Back then, she had made up her mind to run the Grey Sect. And very fortunately, Lotus Sun happened to see a familiar name among the 10 teams that had already entered the spirit world. Elsewhere, in the oasis of test field number 1 in the spirit world, Wang Ling could actually sense that Li Changjia had been playing dead all this time, which made it impossible for him to carry out his plan to shift the blame to Li Changjia. Zhang Linian's hint had been accepted very smoothly, and she had already organized a team to make spirit energy batteries out of cobblestones. So now he had to think of a way to help Li Changjia stand up. Zhang Linian was still busy when he suddenly saw a female high school student with ear-length hair, an oval face and unusually fair skin walk toward him. Wang Ling felt that this person looked a little familiar, but he couldn't put a name to it. Don't you recognize me, classmate Wang Ling? Wang Ling was very surprised. He hadn't expected this girl to actually communicate with him in fluent Mandarin. Seeing Wang Ling's bewildered expression, the girl didn't beat around the bush, and directly introduced herself. I am Six-Eyed Scarlet Rice. He's the one from Jiudao in high school, nicknamed Sparrow. Wang Ling was stunned. If Six-Eyed Crimson Rice hadn't introduced herself, Wang Ling wouldn't have recognized her at all. This change was too big, but it had only been a few months, right? The pockmarks on the sparrow's face were gone, and her figure was much more robust than before. Most importantly, she had taken off her glasses. Wang Ling really couldn't help it at all. His impression of Sparrow was actually still that of Jiudao in high school. In his memory, she was a computer expert, and very much admired Wang Ming's old V identity. Seeing the puzzled look on Wang Ling's face, Sparrow explained simply, Don't misunderstand, I'm still a student of Jiudao in high school. But this time, I'm representing Jiudao in high school. Outside help? Wang Ling suddenly opened his mouth, as reticent as ever. The main reason was that he felt it was a little impolite for the girl to say so much to him in a series of indifferent replies. You can think of it that way. Another reason is to gather some information. My school uniform is from Yamada No High School, which is currently the second-ranked high school on our Sun Island, Sparrow replied in a low voice. She then looked at Li Changjia, who was still lying on the side pretending to be dead, making a V sign at Wang Ling. She then began to mouth at him. Old V and cult leader asked me to help you. Wang Ling easily read these words from the shape of Sparrow's mouth. Then he saw Sparrow take out a stack of golden needles from her pocket and start her performance. Hey, classmate Wang Ling, Li Changjia still hasn't woken up. Do you think there's a blood clot in his brain? I happen to have learned a bit of acupuncture. Do you want to give him a try? Hearing this, Li Changzhe's eyelids twitched visibly, but he still had no intention of waking up. After all, compared to losing face, it didn't matter if he suffered a few acupuncture needles. As long as he secretly used spirit energy to seal off his acupuncture points and block the golden needles, he wouldn't feel too much pain. But Li Changzhe had no idea that Sparrow was a ruthless person. First, she pretended to be very professional as she checked Li Changzhe's pulse, then abruptly screamed in surprise. "Oh my God, he's too badly injured." Sure enough, there's a blood clot in his brain. Not only is there a blood clot in his brain, it's spreading. I'm afraid that in a few hours, it'll spread to the lower half of his body. After saying this, Sparrow withdrew the golden needles on the side and side. In this situation, using golden needles is already useless. The only way to release the blood clot is to use a knife. Quack. Definitely a quack. Hearing this, Li Changzhe's heart crumbled. Even Wang Ling didn't know why Sparrow had so many tools on her. She was clearly a hacker, but in the end, she had a complete set of tools. He watched anxiously as Sparrow took out a kitchen knife, and was astonished to realize that this kitchen knife was actually intelligent. A keyboard actually appeared on the surface of the kitchen knife. After typing for a while, Sparrow wiped at her sweat. "Don't worry, classmate Wang Ling. I'm not a professional, but the program won't lie, and it'll be very accurate. It's just cutting off an inch or two, it's no problem at all." Wang Ling and Li Changzhe. "I've already programmed this smart kitchen knife. It will start on its own in 3 minutes, and when it's done, it'll directly lock up his HP. You don't have to worry about classmate Li bleeding. You just need to release the blood clot." At that moment, Sparrow covered her mouth and pretended to be in pain. "There's no other way. I hope classmate Li won't blame me after he wakes up. After all, this is all to save his life." It had to be said that Sparrow's acting was so realistic that even Wang Ling believed it. But at that moment, Li Changzhe actually still didn't show any signs of waking up. Wang Ling knew that Li Changzhe could most likely tell that Sparrow was trying to goad him into waking up, and he was betting that Sparrow's smart kitchen knife definitely wouldn't work. But what Wang Ling and Li Changzhe didn't expect was, just 3 minutes later, the kitchen knife actually flew up. Chapter 1936. The moment the kitchen knife flew up, Wang Ling's face was filled with astonishment. This smart black iron kitchen knife flew up in front of them, and as the blade swept past them, there was a crisp clang in their ears. Lying on the ground, Li Changzhe could even feel the faint sound of the knife cutting through his hair. In that instant, Li Changzhe felt the hair all over his body stand on end. He had never thought that what Sparrow had said would actually be true, that this kitchen knife could actually fly. At that moment, Li Changzhe could no longer stay calm. Wang Ling felt that there was a popular online phrase that was most suitable to describe Li Changzhe's performance at that moment. He couldn't hold it in any longer. It was believed that any boy who faced the same situation as Li Changzhe would feel the same horror in his heart. He hurriedly got up from the ground with a frightened look on his face. His face had turned purple, like a fish that had been stranded on the beach for a long time. Even the sound of his breathing became extremely rapid. Crack. The knife finally landed 1 centimeter in front of Li Changzhe's crotch. Sparrow was serious. If he hadn't woken up in time and dodged, this knife would have really turned Li Changzhe into a leftover old man. Are all girls so vicious nowadays? Li Changzhe, who was pretending to be asleep, felt a lingering fear in his heart. His cheeks were dripping with sweat as he cursed repeatedly in his heart. "Classmate Li, you're actually awake. I thought you'd never wake up again," Sparrow said in pleasant surprise as she wept excitedly, as if she was really concerned about Li Changzhe's injury. On the side, Wang Ling called her an expert when he saw her acting skills. Sparrow was too vicious. Although her appearance had changed drastically after what had just happened, Wang Ling was sure that this was Sparrow herself. She was still as black-bellied and strange as ever, which left people scratching their heads. "Haha. I just felt like I had a nightmare just now, and then I suddenly woke up with a start. But what's with this kitchen knife? I'm not sure." Li Changzhe laughed and rubbed the back of his head, the expression on his face extremely awkward. He was playing dumb. If he wasn't playing dumb, if he hadn't played dumb, then Taishi would have died. It's all right, classmate Lee, the kitchen knife was just an accident. I saw that you didn't wake up. I just wanted to do something for you. After saying that, Sparrow looked at Wang Ling with a smile. Right, classmate Wang Ling? Li Changzhe was shocked once again. This woman really knew how to lie without a draft. What kind of stew was that? However, he had no choice but to pretend that he didn't know about these things. Otherwise, he would have to admit that he was pretending to be asleep. Fortunately, Sparrow didn't get to the bottom of it. Her original mission was to wake Li Changzhe up, and now her mission had been successfully completed. Li Changzhe was not stupid. Seeing that Sparrow did not continue to ask, he instantly understood that Sparrow was deliberately giving him a way out. After all, the students who could come here were the cream of the crop of high school students in the world, and playing dead in front of them wasn't easy to fool. Furthermore, Li Changzhe never expected Wang Ling to actually have such a good relationship with foreign students. At first, he had been very hostile to number 60 high and looked down on Wang Ling. He felt that Wang Ling was just a legendary mascot, who didn't deserve to compete on the same stage as this group of elite high school students. But from what he could see now, Wang Ling actually wasn't as bad as he had imagined. How did the saying go? Only substitute envoys can attract substitute envoys. In other words, only outstanding people can attract outstanding people. Since Wang Ling could be recognized by elite foreign high school students, he had to be outstanding in some way. Although Li Changzhe still didn't know how Wang Ling had entered the tea house, nor did he know what was so special about him, the only thing he could say for now was that Wang Ling was a genuine good person. He had carried him on his back all the way to the oasis, and after putting him down under the tree, he had been taking care of him. Every time Li Changzhe thought of this, he always felt a little ashamed. He had gauged the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. Let me introduce myself. I'm Six-Eyed Scarlet Heezy. With Sparrow's intervention, communication became much easier. Sparrow took the initiative to introduce herself and shake hands with Li Changzhe, because the current situation was far more serious than they had imagined. Not only did they have to break through, they also had to think of a way to face an external threat. Furthermore, only Sparrow and Wang Ling knew about this threat. Wang Ling had seen it himself. Out of the corner of his king's eye, he had penetrated the surveillance cameras to verify his previous conjecture, and found out that the command post of Essence Search Yard was currently being hijacked. As for Sparrow, Wang Ming had sent her a message in code, which was a hacker's language that only Sparrow herself could understand. In other words, they were currently being monitored by criminals at the same time. Of course, Wang Ling wasn't completely clueless about this. Given Elder Tung's strength, there was no way he wouldn't be able to take care of those pieces of trash. So Wang Ling understood almost instantly. Elder Tung was testing him. Elder Tung was trying to test him. Big brother, you're finally awake. Seeing that Li Changzhe had woken up, Zhang Linyan hurried over with a few spirit energy cobblestones that she had just made. The problem of endurance had been solved for the time being. With the spirit energy cobblestones, they didn't need to replenish their spirit energy with those damn spirit fruits in the oasis. She and Li Changzhe had only exchanged a few words when the ground of the oasis suddenly shook slightly. It was not a big movement, but the people in the oasis with strong senses all felt at the same time that there were many powerful auras gathering from all directions and surrounding the oasis. What's going on? Someone was puzzled. Look! At that moment, Sparrow suddenly pointed at Chu Shuling and shouted. The bruise on the back of Chu Shuling's neck actually glowed with a bright light. A spirit energy mark? At the same time, everyone understood. The moment the spirit beast that had knocked Chu Shuling down had struck her, it had added its own spirit energy mark. It had accurately pinpointed Chu Shuling's position. And now, those spirit beasts were rioting. And following the trajectory of the spirit energy mark, they were heading in the direction of the oasis. What's going on? Why isn't this the same as what we discussed earlier? Zhang Linyan was a little puzzled. Somehow, she felt that the content of the test had changed fundamentally, but she couldn't pinpoint what the problem was. Wang Ling lowered his head in contemplation. Just as he was thinking of a solution, he suddenly heard Sparrow stand up and shout. counter soldiers with arms, water with an earthen dam. We can only think of a way to fight. Where are the Grey Sect disciples? We're here. We're here. We're here. In a split second, the high school cultivators from all over the world responded in unison in their own languages. This time, Wang Ling was completely stunned. It turned out that except for the 10th group from Wuxia Nation who had just entered the spirit world, the remaining high school students were actually all Grey Sect members. And Sparrow, the deputy minister of Nine Paths and the Grey Sect branch, had shockingly become the temporary boss here. Chapter 1937. Almost immediately, Wang Ming and Jia Yin shared the news that Tung Luken was already suspecting Wang Ling. In fact, Wang Ming and Jia Yin had already rehearsed this earlier on in order to deal with how things would develop. Apart from his blood relatives Jia Yin Lotus Sun, Audiobook, Kamiya Ryoko, Zhou Zi, Gu Xuanji, Qin Zong and Xiangyi currently knew Wang Ling's true strength. Most of the remaining core members of Battle Sect, such as grenade-throwing senior Immortal and Immortal Jin Yuan, were in fact still half-baked. Their instincts told them that Wang Ling wasn't just a 16-year-old teenager. Instead, it was a 10,000-year-old demon experiencing the daily life of a high school student. Fortunately, grenade-throwing senior Immortal was one of Wang Ling's few close friends in the cultivation world. Even if he was in a half-imaginative state, he would still tacitly cooperate with Audiobook to cover for Wang Ling. His EQ was very high, and his temper was very much to Wang Ling's liking. This was also one of the main reasons why Wang Ling had helped Battle Sect rise back then. But it clearly wasn't appropriate for Tung Luken to be the first to inform a core member of Battle Sect who was in a half-imaginative state about Wang Ling. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary people. Now Lotus Sun was using the power of the Grey Church to cover for Wang Ling. At the same time, it might be necessary to achieve a two-pronged approach. In this situation, Audiobook was needed to coordinate the work. Master, what's wrong? Why do you look so serious? At Battle Sect's training ground, Audiobook was instructing Zhou Zi in his cultivation of the spirit sword. When he received Jia Yin's message, Zhou Zi saw Audiobook's frown and hurriedly asked this question. There's a problem. Your grandmaster might be suspected by a senior. Audiobook didn't hide anything and told Zhou Zi directly. Under his training, Zhou Zi's newly grown legs and body coordination had made great progress. He was no different from a normal person now. He had passed the test of walking, running, and jumping. Actually, I think it's already a miracle that Grandmaster hasn't been suspected until now. Zhou Zi didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Audiobook. Who on earth is suspecting Grandmaster? A senior surname Tung. Everyone calls him Elder Tung. Is his name Tung Luken? You know him. He's the owner of the Nine Heavens Tea House. And he knows me. In fact, Elder Tung was a good person. He was quite concerned about the development of the young people in the cultivation world. When I broke my leg, he brought tea leaves to our house to visit me, Zhou Zi said. But you know your grandmaster's situation. He's very strong, yes. But not everyone likes to be shrouded in glory. Audiobook sighed. Living quietly is also a kind of cultivation. I'm afraid you and I won't be able to comprehend this kind of spirit in a short time. Indeed. Zhou Zi nodded. He knew that he would never be able to reach Wang Ling's heights in his lifetime. But Zhou Zi also had his own cultivation path, which he realized was very similar to Audiobook's. That was chivalrous, serving the country and the people. This was also the reason why he had worshipped Audiobook and taken him as his master back then. Zhou Zi imagined that if he had great strength, he might take a completely different path from his grandmaster, Wang Ling. For example, taking responsibility for the common people and becoming the benchmark for all the cultivators in the world. As a benchmark, it was impossible for him to take the low-profile path of a reclusive cultivator. When that time came, all the glory of wealth and fame would follow. As the saying went, to wear the crown, one must bear its weight. Zhou Zi felt that this was the path he needed to explore in the future. How could he not forget his original intentions and maintain his true colors under these limitless halos? Although they walked different cultivation paths, Zhou Zi didn't think that he, Audiobook, and Wang Ling were enemies. The essence of the world was that light and shadow went hand in hand. Some people wanted to be the shadow, and some people wanted to be the light. Where there was light, there was shadow. No one could leave the other. Elder Teng is very strong. It won't be easy to fool him. Of course, I don't have much contact with Elder Teng. It's just a hunch. Shifu, you have to handle this carefully. After thinking for a while, Zhou Zi said, I can handle the training on my own. Grandmaster is in trouble now, so you should go and solve his problem first. Your Shermu is already helping out in secret on the inside. But the outside still needs to be resolved, Audiobook said. Audiobook said, the command center of Nine Heavens Essence Courtyard has been hijacked by a group of villains, and Elder Teng is currently being held hostage to manipulate the system. This has caused the test field to deviate from the original script, and they've dispatched even more powerful spirit beasts to attack the high school students taking the test. Hijacked? Zhou Zi asked curiously. No way. Elder Teng should be very strong. Can they beat him? Very quickly his eyes lit up, and he said without waiting for Audiobook's reply, Oh, I get it. Elder Teng is doing this on purpose. He wants to see Grandmaster's reaction. That's why he arranged this. It could only be said that Zhou Zi was Zhou Zi in the end. He was indeed extremely smart and had figured it out with just one hint. Audiobook was very satisfied with this analysis. Go on. If I had to solve this outside problem, what would you do if it were you? Since Elder Teng is deliberately not doing anything to test Grandmaster, then we'll force him to do it. Not only do we have to force him to do it, we also have to send people to save him. Zhou Zi smiled. Elder Teng's identity isn't simple. It's reasonable for us to send people to save him. Furthermore, Elder Teng is in Songhai City, right? Isn't that within the scope of Battle Sect's authority? I remember that Huaxiu Alliance originally signed a very long security outsourcing agreement with Battle Sect. Hahaha, you're too smart, Z. We're thinking the same thing. As he listened, Audiobook couldn't help laughing. We'll continue with the training later. I'll send Senior Immortal a message first. Tell him to take action immediately. Also, he must be on the highest level of alert. This will show how much importance Battle Sect takes this matter. Roughly 10 minutes later, at Battle Sect's headquarters in Songhai City, in Zhengyang Square in front of True Venerated Hall, the primordial horn, which the sect had set up on hundreds of mountain peaks, sounded like the deep cry of a primordial divine beast. In a short period of time, each peak had dispatched a total of 6,000 Battle Sect disciples at or above the Golden Core stage to assemble in the square. 200 elders at or above the nascent soul stage were standing on magic artifacts in formation in the air above the square. This was Battle Sect's first rapid response force after entering Level 1 alert. Battle Sect had already practiced this several times before, but no one expected them to actually be put to use so quickly. It's the sound of the primordial horn. The elders want us to return to the sect quickly. Captain, what do we do now? At that moment, the sect disciples who were carrying out sect missions in Songhai City all raised their heads the moment they heard the primordial horn. Listen to my orders, unless you're on a mission to keep an eye on someone. Everyone else who can return to the sect. Follow me back to the sect immediately. There's going to be a tough battle. Chapter 1938. In the early hours of Wednesday, January 15th, this world-renowned city that never sleeps, Songhai City's brightly lit streets were accompanied by the deep sound of Hongming's horn, adding to the hustle and bustle of the brilliant night. This was the first time since the Golden Foundation's sneak attack on Battle Sect that Battle Sect's disciples were carrying out a large-scale battle plan under the guidance of the official command center. Apart from those who were on essential missions, all the Battle Sect disciples wearing light blue Battle Sect uniforms immediately took out their spirit swords in unison the moment they heard the order. Stepping on their spirit swords, they flew through the city on their swords as they started to return to the sect. Their movements were uniform as they underwent the most rigorous training under Battle Sect's unified guidance. Although Battle Sect hadn't been around for a long time, all its disciples had a sense of collective honor for the sect at all times, which was something that many other modern sects couldn't achieve. Wu! The Hongmeng roar sounded a total of 12 times. When the sound of the Hongmeng roar fell to the ground, the battle sect disciples on the Zhengyang Plaza had already neatly formed dozens of square formations. They had gathered from their respective peaks, and some had turned back from the city. The moment they heard Hongmeng, they all assembled, each with a spirit sword on their back and a medicinal gourd at their waists as they waited solemnly. The first batch of rapid response troops has been assembled. Great Elder, please give us your instructions. A head peak elder turned to Fangxing and asked for instructions. The moment Fangxing appeared, many of the battle sect disciples below felt like their eyes were playing tricks on them, because it was an incomparably young face with a gorgeous face that made many people's hearts ripple. Fangxing had to appear in the sect in his female form because this would hide his identity as a student in his male form. There were many eyes in the sect, and if he faced them in his male form, it might cause unnecessary trouble. Many of the disciples at the bottom of the mountain hardly ever saw the identities of the sect's founding elders when they cultivated on a daily basis. Fangxing was one of them, and since he had to study at number 60 high school, it was even more rare for them to see him. This time, he appeared in his female form in a long, snow-white dress, and his graceful figure deeply shocked everyone present. Some of the disciples whispered to each other below, "What's this great elder's name? Why haven't I seen him before? Don't look up for too long. It's too rude. This is the legendary elder Fangxing. So it's her, the founding great elder with no profile picture on Battle Sect's website. Yes. She's been here since the founding of the sect." Battle Sect's founding great elders can't compare to ordinary peak elders. Even seniors who were later promoted to great elder have to be reverent to the founding great elders. At this point, the surrounding disciples all lowered their heads when they heard this. Everyone's faces were filled with respect and excitement. This was the founding great elder of the sect's founding great elders. How honorable his status was. It was rumored that all of them were existences who usually chatted and laughed with grenade-throwing sect leader. At this moment, sect's battle sect was battle sect's battle sect had been battle, and in sect was by the sect. This proved that the battle sect's internal management system was very strict, and the management levels were very clear. Under the situation where the disciples at the bottom couldn't see the great elder at the top, it was indeed very easy for them to be able to see it at the juncture of a group battle. Sect's battle. S's battle sect S. Fangxing waited for a moment, until everyone had quieted down before she opened her mouth. In her female form, her voice was cold, beautiful, and dignified. I believe some of you have already heard that our target this time is Songhai City's Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute. Everyone knows that Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute is an official organization that specializes in gathering outstanding young cultivators from all over the country. As the saying goes, the country is strong when the young are strong. The Essence Search Institute's role is to gather young cultivation geniuses and nurture them, so that they can be included in the system in the future to win glory for the country and become the mainstay of our Huaxiao nation. It can be said that Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute is a pillar of support for the rise of young people. And now, according to reliable information, a group of criminals has invaded Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute right under our noses. They have extraordinary strength and a lot of people. Everyone from Battle Sect, I want to ask, what are you going to do? The disciples in the square looked at each other in dismay for a while. Then someone shouted, "Of course. I can't live under the same sky as evil." As soon as his voice fell, the surrounding disciples clenched their fists and shouted in unison. One after another, the crowd was stirred up. "I can't live under the same sky as evil. I can't live under the same sky as evil." Fangxing nodded in satisfaction, then waved his hand abruptly. "On my command, let's go." At the same time in Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute, Tung Luken still didn't know what was going to happen. He stared at the screen with great interest as he quietly studied Wang Ling's face. He wanted to see how Wang Ling would perform when surrounded by spirit beasts. This group of criminals' sudden attack had actually done him a huge favor, giving him the opportunity to properly test Wang Ling's true strength. Now that he was about to succeed, Tung Luken was full of excitement. After all, this matter hadn't alarmed the police at the moment, and no one knew that Nine Heavens Essence Search Institute was currently being held hostage. As long as he could confirm Wang Ling's strength, he would immediately counterattack and suppress this group of criminals. This little guy is really good at hiding things. He believed that his eyes weren't wrong. Wang Ling was definitely the peerless genius he had been looking for all this time. At that moment, the oasis was already surrounded by a large number of high-grade spirit beasts. Because the criminals had requested that the sound be turned off, Tung Luken couldn't hear the situation inside the oasis for the time being. But at the same time, he noticed that at Six-Eyed Red Heezy's call, almost all the elite high school students had been mobilized. This was also a rare piece of information. It seemed that this Six-Eyed Red Heezy had been hiding all this time, and hadn't had this kind of rallying power at all. And the change in rallying power from before to now was also due to Wang Ling's arrival. Tung Luken felt that this was even more proof of his theory, because at the same time he had also noticed that this Six-Eyed Red Heezy had a brief exchange with Wang Ling. In other words, perhaps the real mastermind behind the scenes was Wang Ling. It was possible that Six-Eyed Red Heezy was just passing on orders. Come on, classmate Wang Ling. Tung Luken's face was calm as he said this in his heart. His mind was filled with thoughts as he constantly tried to figure out everything about Wang Ling. Just as he was staring intently at the screen, all of a sudden, the alarm in Nine Heavens Essence Academy rang. None of the alarms had been set off when the criminals had invaded earlier, but at this important moment, they sounded like a symphony. At that moment, Nine Heavens Essence Academy was already surrounded by all the Battle Sect disciples. The whole building had been sealed off by the Battle Sect disciples. Not a single person could escape from the building. What's going on? The criminal leader who was holding Tung Luken back with the golden wind was also startled. He still hadn't figured out what was going on. Behind him, there was suddenly a loud boom from the command room's door. Immediately after that, dozens of Battle Sect disciples directly rushed in, and the person leading the charge was Fang Xing in her female form. Each and every one of them raised their spirit swords as if they had been injected with chicken blood, and shouted excitedly, "Control the criminals. Save Elder Tung. Kill. I can't live under the same sky as evil. Tung Luken." Chapter 1939. Tung Luken had never expected a large number of Battle Sect disciples to pour into the command post. Not only that, the power supply to the command post had also been cut off. The moment the Battle Sect disciples had poured in, all the electronic equipment on the scene, including the surveillance cameras, had been instantly shut down, and the place was plunged into darkness. Behave yourself. Don't resist. These Battle Sect disciples were all elites. They had clearly come prepared, and had used their contact lenses with night vision to accurately rescue every researcher on the scene. It had been less than a minute since the power had been cut off and the backup power had been turned on. When the lights in the command post came back on, Fang Xing had already knocked out the criminal leader with the golden wind. Peak rank 9 true immortal. Tung Luken frowned. He had never seen Fang Xing in female form, but from his clothes, he could already tell that he was an elder of Battle Sect. At this realm he was probably a great elder. He realized that he had underestimated Battle Sect's intelligence-gathering ability, and felt that he had done it flawlessly. He had originally planned to sound Wang Ling out, but this time, it just so happened that these blind criminals had attacked, and he had taken advantage of the situation to carry out his plan. For this reason, Tung Luken had been very careful during the hijacking, and at the same time, he had completely blocked out the news. Logically speaking, even the police didn't know that the Ninth Heaven Command Post had been hijacked. But Battle Sect had received the news in advance, and had sent people here. This made Tung Luken feel that the situation had suddenly become very unusual. "Greetings, Senior Tung. We have come on the sect leader's orders. I am Battle Sect's great elder. You can call me Little Fang, Elder Tung." Fang Xing bowed politely with his hands in front of him, and no one could find anything wrong with his smile. Tung Luken was a little annoyed because Battle Sec's intervention had actually ruined his plan, but in this situation, he could only suffer in silence. After a long while, he finally cleared his throat and said, "It's fine, little Fong, you've worked hard. Elder Tung, I've already checked. This golden wind is fake." After saying that, Fong Xing handed the pistol to Tung Luken with both hands. "Elder Tung, you're still working so hard at this late hour. You might be tired, so please get some rest. Although cultivators can go without sleep, Elder Tung is the pillar of the sect, so you should take care of your body." Tung Tianyuan's mouth twitched when he heard this. He could roughly tell that this Elder Fong from the Battle Sect was obviously implying something. How could a pillar of support like him not be able to tell that the golden wind was fake? Since they could tell that it was fake, they pretended to be held hostage. Wasn't it obvious that they had other motives? Tung Luken felt a bit sullen. He looked at the pitch-black screen behind him and sighed in his heart. When he reopened the screen, he found that the battle in the spirit realm had already ended. After Wang Ming received Battle Sec's order to go and rescue them, he immediately adjusted the code and used the spirit world system to transport away the high-level spirit beasts that had been transferred from the other maps. In other words, it would not be strange if any of the elite high school students killed the remaining spirit beasts. What a pity. Just a little more, and he might have been able to see Wang Ling make a move with his own eyes. However, although the power of the surveillance equipment had been cut off, the spirit world system was still operating normally. In other words, during the black screen just now, the internal monitor was still operating. Tung Luken felt that there might be some new information about Wang Ling in there. He would have to think of a way to retrieve this information later. Even if the image hadn't been preserved, there would at least be a recording. He had been suspicious of Wang Ling for a long time, and wouldn't give up on investigating him so easily. Furthermore, given the current situation, Tung Luken even suspected that Battle Sec's sudden operation to break out of the command post and rescue them might very well be a cover-up. It might even be to cover up Wang Ling's actions. All of this was too much of a coincidence, as if it had been planned, which made Tung Luken very suspicious. After thinking for a bit, Tung Luken pretended to be unperturbed on the surface. He waved his hand to summon a staff member, who put the golden wind into a plastic envelope. "I'll leave this toy in your care for the time being." "Very well, Elder Tung." The staff member nodded. "Have you called the police?" Tung Luken asked. The staff member glanced at Fong Xing. The police cars arrived at the same time Elder Fong broke out of the encirclement. The outside of the command post is now completely surrounded. Hearing this, Tung Luken was silent for a moment. He could only scratch his head and silently say "forget it" in his heart before he left the command post. It wasn't convenient for him to directly explain the surveillance footage here. Tung Luken already suspected that there was a mole in the command center, who was passing on information due to Battle Sec's sudden operation just now. He already didn't trust anyone. It was safest to hand over the surveillance footage and audio recordings to Jing Hechio, who would then hand them over to him. There were really too many suspicious points. Tung Luken thought it was funny. When he reached the main entrance of the command post, he suddenly saw a familiar figure. It was Audiobook, who was being interviewed by the media and under the frenzied flashes of countless cameras. He had almost forgotten. Audiobook also had an actual connection to Battle Sect. In essence, he was Battle Sect's founding Great Elder, but it was just a title of honor, and had no real connection to his actual position. He remembered that Audiobook had been sent by Wuxia Alliance to inspect and supervise Battle Sect, which was perfectly justifiable. Furthermore, Battle Sect itself was under Wuxia Alliance's jurisdiction. Although Battle Sect had foiled his plan this time, Tung Luken realized that he really couldn't blame it on Battle Sect. After all, the gangsters had taken over Nine Heavens Essence Courtyard's command post, which was a very serious matter. Furthermore, Battle Sect had previously signed an official city security agreement with Wuxia Alliance. This was actually a very common move everywhere, and was mainly to share the burden of the cultivation police system. However, sects that could sign this kind of agreement had to be at least sky level. Before the interview was over, Audiobook saw Tung Luken. and he hurriedly had the deputy director take over the interview as he jogged over. "Greetings, old Tung." He bowed to Tung Luken and said respectfully, "I heard that this group of gangsters were very fierce." Looking at old Tung, this junior can rest assured that you weren't injured. "Hey, you're well informed." Tung Luken laughed dryly. "I'll say this up front. Even if you're unaccountably solicitous, this old man won't be able to help much with the election of the new leader of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools. The position of leader depends on one's own ability. This junior can't thank old Ting enough for your concern," Ajwa said with a smile. Tung Luken sighed and could only leave with a flick of his sleeves. He frowned deeply. Suspicious. Everything was too suspicious. Chapter 1940. Ajwa had been covering for so long, but this was the first time he felt a sense of crisis. He felt that Tung Luken was very dangerous, more dangerous than anyone he had met before. Not only that, he even felt that he might have exposed himself in trying to save Wang Ling this time. This elder Tung wasn't someone who would be so easily fooled. Ajwa sighed emotionally in his heart. After Elder Tung left, he immediately entered BattleSec's core group chat to report on his work. Elder Tung has already left, but my intuition tells me that he won't give up on investigating Shifu so easily. Lotus Sun was especially concerned about this matter, and replied almost immediately, "I asked Grandpa just now, but he doesn't know much about Elder Tung. What we can confirm, however, is that Elder Tung's relationship with Lord Yuan Venerate isn't ordinary. After all, he's someone from that era, so it's very normal." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. "Everyone continue to be vigilant. If Brother Ling isn't careful this time, I'm afraid he'll be exposed." Lotus Sun. "Of course, I'll think of a way to keep this matter under wraps later. By the way, I have to thank classmate Fong Xing this time, for all. Fong Xing. Don't mention it, it's all part of my job. Wang Ling's business is also my business." At this point, although the atmosphere in the group seemed harmonious on the surface, everyone was sweating profusely in private. Although they had barely managed to deal with BattleSec's sudden operation this time, it was just as Ajwa had thought. It was precisely because their operation this time had been too abrupt that Elder Ting thought it was a way to cover up their tracks. By the time Tung Luken returned to Nine Heavens Tea House, Jing Huchio had already used the creation spell and the star-shifting array to repair the damaged area. Nine Heavens Tea House was an important location, and usually had a backup of the same building materials, so when it was damaged, it could be easily repaired using magic. At that moment, the tea house's door was tightly shut. Jing Huchio bowed to Tung Luken, who didn't look too good. "Elder Tung, because of an accident in the first batch of students who didn't take the test, follow-up tests have already been arranged. The students who have already entered the spirit world have also successfully passed the internal test and returned. However, looking at Old Ting's expression, it seems like he hasn't found the answer he wants." Tung Luken sat on a wooden bench with his eyebrows tightly furrowed. After thinking for a long time, he looked at Jing Huchio and slowly said, "What do you think about the BattleSec's sudden arrival?" "I always feel that it's very sudden. It feels like he's hiding something," Jing Huchio answered honestly. Hearing this, Tung Luken suddenly laughed. "Not bad, you've improved a bit. The BattleSec's actions this time have exposed the truth that they are trying to hide. However, as for what they are trying to hide, this old man still lacks evidence. So Elder Tung is still suspecting Student Wang. What do you think?" "I think he's nothing special. There's nothing special about him. Even my entry into the spiritual realm this time was thanks to Li Changjia." "Did you see it clearly? Did he stick himself onto Li Changjia's body and get in?" "I saw it clearly. There's no mistaking it," Jing Huchio said. "Furthermore, Elder Tung, don't you think that for the BattleSec to carry out such a large-scale operation to protect a high school student, isn't it a bit too unrealistic?" "You're right. That's the logic of a normal person." Tung Luken smiled and paused. He originally wanted to say, "But sometimes things aren't what they seem." But in the end he couldn't open his mouth. However, Tung Luken still firmly believed that his judgment was correct. Wang Ling was the young man he had been looking for all this time. It was just that right now he still lacked crucial evidence. This internal test in the spirit realm was actually a double-edged sword. On the way back to the Nine Heavens tea house, Tung Luken had already come up with a counter-analysis hypothesis. If battle sex operation this time really was to provide cover for Wang Ling, in that case, battle sec definitely already knew that all of his plans were aimed at Wang Ling. In other words, the war sex actions this time seemed to have alerted the enemy, but they were too rash. At the same time, his actions were also exposed in broad daylight during this test. But Tung Luken wasn't flustered at all, because exposing his true intentions through this internal test in the spirit realm was also within his calculations. Have you obtained the recording of the internal test in the spirit realm? Not yet, but I've already secured the data inside the server. I'll personally copy and transfer it later to ensure that nothing goes wrong. And well done. Tung Luken nodded. Remember, you can only report this directly to me. You don't need to go through anyone else. Understood? Yes, Elder Tung. Jing Huchyo nodded. It's just that there's something I don't understand, and I don't know if I should say it. Tung Luken. You want to ask me why I'm so obsessed with this Wang Ling? Jing Huchyo nodded. Yes. He really didn't understand. Given Tung Luchen's status, why would he waste so much precious time on such an ordinary high school student? What was more, Jing Huchyo felt that he had some ability to identify talents. His realm wasn't low, and after following Tung Luken for so many years, he had seen a lot of geniuses of all shapes and sizes. But he was sure that Wang Ling definitely wasn't the person he or Tung Luken were looking for. A cultivator who only knew how to consume puffy food wasn't good for cultivation at all. I still need some time to verify this question. When the time is right, this old man will naturally tell you. Tung Luken kept Jing Huchyo guessing as he said, In all these years, I've never been wrong. I hope so. Jing Huchyo said. Before Tung Luken left Nine Heavens tea house, he was still skeptical. And after sending Jing Huchyo off, Tung Luken also started on the next step of his plan. Earlier, he had guessed that this spirit realm test would be a double-edged sword, exposing both sides. And his intention to deliberately expose himself to test Wang Ling was also part of the plan. This definitely wasn't something Tung Luken had said casually. As soon as Jing Huchyo left, Tung Luken walked up to the tea shelves in the tea house. The shelves were filled with small pots of fragrant tea, all of which had been carefully selected works by great masters. He touched one of the hexagonal ceramic teapots and changed the angle of the teapot. Then, there was the sudden hum of a mechanism being activated on the tea shelves. Behind the teapots, a wall covered with photos and stickers appeared. This was all the information that Tung Luken had collected over the years. Each and every one of them was closely related to Wang Ling. At that moment, Tung Luken personally added the latest piece of information to the wall. Battle sex suspects that I am testing Wang Ling. If I lose my memory in the future, that means that all the suspicions recorded on this wall are correct answers. This note was written by Tung Luken on January 15, 4397, 3:48 in the morning. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.